Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. I saw someone from South Africa, Canada. We got Alan from Kentucky here. We're just getting started, just a couple minutes late. Totally apologize for that. We're just going to be getting started here with Susan in a minute. Hello, Maria from Mexico, Anne from India. It's great to see everybody here pouring into the room. Um, Belgrade, Serbia, Svetlana. Wow, welcome, welcome. I wonder what time it is there. Istanbul. Oh, wow, Istanbul, Turkey. So here we are today. We're getting ready to hear from Susan and our great webinar. Libby, Montana. Jackie. Wow, that's so cool. Ron Friedman brought you here. Juan, hello. Suzanne from Denmark. That is so cool. Heart House is in the house. Heart House to 2015. Here we go. So welcome to our webinar, The Badly Behaving Brain, Why 2 Billion People Can't Lose Weight, and What You Can Do Differently. My name's Chris Davis from Brightline Eating. I'm the chief of staff over here, best job in the world. I myself have lost 70 pounds using Brightline Eating and have never felt better. Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson will be starting the webinar shortly. I'm going to ask you for now, turn off all your distractions, grab a pen and paper, or open your note-taking app or your computer, as you'll definitely want to take notes today. If this is your first time in a session with Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson, you are in for such a treat. Susan is the founder and CEO of Brightline Eating Solutions, an organization dedicated to helping people of all ages, stages, and walks of life use science-backed, brain-based methods to lose weight and keep it off for good. Brightline Eating has helped people from over 190 countries around the world lose more than 300,000 collective pounds to date, which is a remarkable statistic. And you might be wondering, how is Brightline Eating different from other weight loss programs out there, and why is it so successful? Well, that's because it's science-based. Susan earned her Ph.D. in brain and cognitive sciences from the University of Rochester and now serves as an adjunct associate professor there as well. Her work, along with her own personal weight loss journey, instilled a passion for uncovering the mystery of why so many people struggle to lose weight and keep it off long term. After extensive research and direct experience coaching thousands of people, Susan has now become one of the world's leading experts on the psychology of eating and the neuroscience of food addiction. Susan's the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Brightline Eating: The Science of Living Happy, Thin, and Free. This book has been translated into 13 languages, including Finland. It's an invaluable resource for the world, and I highly recommend that you add it to your own personal library. Great book. I'm very excited for you to go through today's masterclass. Susan leads with heart, honesty, and integrity. You'll not only love her, but you'll be blown away by what you learn today. Her approach isn't just effective, it's truly revolutionary. Sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. And make sure you stay till the end because Susan's giving away a very special gift. With that, please help me welcome Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson.
Oh, thanks, Chris. What a sweet, sweet, sweet introduction. Hey, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson. And before I launch in here, we're going to turn off the chat thread. I know that that's painful because it's so fun in there. But someone's saying, is it available in Spanish now? It is, Maria. It's available in Spanish now. As a matter of fact, the publisher just sent me, I've got like 5 copies in Spanish in my room, which is silly because I never learned Spanish, which I really regret. So if it's not out, it will be shortly. It's done. So I don't know the pub date. But that publishing house covers the entire Spanish-speaking world. So any country where Spanish is one of the main languages, it will be out. So we're silencing the chat thread. And the reason we're doing that is because I'm aware of research on multitasking saying not only does it, really not produce good results, but it kills our enjoyment actually, when we're switching back and forth between two channels, like a chat thread and then the main webinar, we have no fun. We don't like the experience, and I want us to all have fun together, right? This is something that we should enjoy. So the chat thread is going to be turned back on at the end. I will stay on for extended Q&A. I'm committed to answering all your questions. But for now, we're going to stop the chat thread, so you will be relieved of the temptation to be, switching over there. So just give me a quick second while I do that. It's going to take me a second here. Okay, so welcome. And thank you for being here today. Thank you so much. I know your time is valuable. Believe me, I understand about how valuable time is, and I promise that the information that I'm going to share today will be well worth your time and energy. So let's go ahead and get started. Did you know that in the United States alone, right this moment, 108 million people are on a diet? Is that crazy? And actually, that figure is lower than the real number, because the statistic comes from a marketing report that measures how much money people are spending trying to lose weight. So there's definitely more people dieting than the report accounts for, because there's people trying to eat clean or get healthier on their own without spending money on specific diets. Did you know that the average dieter makes 4 to 5 new attempts each year to lose weight? 4 to 5 new attempts each year. How crazy is that? And among those millions of people trying so hard to lose weight with every diet imaginable, there's almost no success. Look at this. Fewer than 1% get slender and stay slender. It's actually more like 1/3% get slender, and then of those, almost all will regain the weight. Yeah, these are discouraging statistics, to say the least, aren't they? People are hitting a brick wall when it comes to weight loss. Today, I want to share with you why this is happening and give you some insights, some brain-based information, and some tools to help encourage you and put you on the right path to losing weight and keeping it off for good. I'm going to show you how your brain is preventing you from losing excess weight. You'll also learn why it can be so hard to stop eating certain foods. You ever try the one piece of pizza experiment? Did that go really well for you? You'll also learn why willpower cannot be relied on for weight loss. A lot of people feel like they know the foods to avoid when trying to lose weight, but over time, they find themselves sabotaging their best interests, and they feel helpless to make the right decisions because their willpower keeps failing them. Can you relate to this? So let's talk about willpower. Did you know that willpower alone is not enough to help you lose weight? Those that rely on it will fail every single time. I'm going to explain why this happens and how you can avoid this common mistake. And finally, you'll learn how the brain can be rewired for weight loss success. Again, all the information that I'll share with you today is grounded in research and science. But it's not just based on what I know as a professor and a cognitive neuroscientist. It's also what I have learned myself as a formerly obese person who tried every sort of diet available to me. The method I've developed, called Bright Line Eating, works, and I have thousands and thousands of people joining with me around the world to prove it. Now, I want to make sure that you stay on until the very end of this webinar. Why? Because I have a gift for you. A free gift. It's one of my most controversial and most groundbreaking reports, and it's called Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin. It will explain why exercise actually hurts rather than helps. And believe me, this is information you need. You do not want to miss this. Okay. So now I'm not going to go on and on about myself, but since we're spending a little time together today, I'd like to share just a little bit with you. This is me with my husband and my 3 daughters. So from left to right, we have Alexis on the left, then Zoe in the middle, and then Maya with her tongue out on the right. This picture's a little old, actually, because Maya just turned 7 yesterday. So she's like 4 in this picture. So Yeah, but I just love this picture because we're all in. I don't know. There's something about us all in white and like just going down like that that I just love. Alexis and Zoe are twins. Maya's the little one. Alexis and Zoe are now 10. I currently live in upstate New York when I'm not busy traveling the world to speak and lead events. So, life is pretty great. I have lots of energy, which of course I need, and I'm very, very grateful for. We have a very busy family life, the events and activities and the school and the play dates and all that stuff. I've been living in a right-sized body now for over 14 years, I don't know, like a month or two shy of 15 years since I reached goal weight, like almost 15 years ago. I eat 3 plentiful, delicious meals every day. I'm pretty much never hungry. I never have to worry about my clothes not fitting. I wear them out. I literally have clothes that I've been wearing for 15 years, like my favorite pair of black slacks now are getting frayed on the inseam because I've been wearing them for 15 years. They always fit. And most importantly, I'm completely free from the obsession with food. But I wasn't always this balanced and healthy and energetic at all. As a matter of fact, my issues with food and my weight go back literally as far as I can remember. So I was chunky as a kid, but by the time I was 11 years old, I was a little bit more than chunky. I actually weighed more than I do now when I was 11. When I was 14 years old, I'd long since been dieting, but when I was 14, I took my first recreational drug with my friends. And I lost 7 pounds that night, and it blew my mind. I was stunned. That started 6 years using drugs to try to regulate my weight and, to have fun and all that stuff. I loved them. But it was also definitely about weight for me. I used pretty much everything, graduating eventually to crystal meth, and then to cocaine, and then ultimately to crack cocaine. Seriously. Of course, this wasn't really a winning life strategy, smoking crack to keep your weight down. Not a brilliant move. I became a serious addict. I dropped out of high school and I burned my life to the ground. You can imagine the things I was doing for money. It was a pretty dark and intense existence. I was a 19-year-old young woman, and I spent most of my time in a crack house. That was my resume at age 19. So I hit rock bottom very young, and just after my 20th birthday, thank the heavens, I got clean and sober. I haven't had a drink or a drug now since August 9th of 1994. That's more than 24 years. And that, my friends, is a miracle. That's the biggest miracle of my life. But here's what's interesting. After I got clean and sober, I didn't find complete, immediate inner peace. Instead, a new addiction took over, food addiction. Now, at first, I was okay with that. I saw the weight piling on, but I was just so grateful to be out of the hell that I'd been living in. But as my weight climbed higher and higher, I became more and more desperate and miserable. I wish I had a picture of me at my highest weight. I don't. This is me at a size 16. I actually got up to a size 24 once in this brief little 3-month span of time. I just binged my brains out and I never left the house, let alone pose for anyone to take a picture of me. Like literally nobody even saw me during that period of time except for my husband that I can remember and one person that I worked with at work. Anyway, the reason I have this picture even is because it was a before picture. I was starting a 12-week bikini body challenge, and the prize for this challenge was $100,000. And I thought I was going to win. I was really determined to win. Now, in this picture, I'd actually just finished running a marathon, just like a month or two before this. So believe it or not, I wasn't unfit in this picture. I was fit. I was just fat on top. I'd been running 40 miles a week for 6 months and I only lost 10 pounds, literally 10 pounds. It was deeply discouraging to say the least. So I never finished this bikini body challenge. So I never got the after picture. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I failed miserably because I just couldn't follow the plan. I could stick with the exercise part. I just couldn't stick with the food part. So during this time, actually, while I was clean and sober already for years, but I was still struggling with my weight and my food addiction. I was in graduate school studying neuroscience. I got my Ph.D. in 2003 in brain and cognitive sciences from the University of Rochester, which I don't know if you know this, is one of the top 3 programs in the world in brain and cognitive sciences. This is a picture of the campus of the University of Rochester right here. It's beautiful. That's how I ended up here in Rochester, New York. I'm originally from San Francisco. As I was wrapping up my PhD, I stopped eating sugar and flour, and I lost all my excess weight. I was so grateful for that. And I poured my heart and soul into helping others in this 12-step program for food addiction that I was in. Over time, though, I came to realize that there was a missing piece, that we needed to understand the science of what was going on as well. It became very clear to me that getting the brain on board was the key to lasting weight loss. And that was the seed from which Bright Line Eating sprouted, and the beginning of me living happy, thin, and free of my battles with food. I started Bright Line Eating in 2014, not to start a movement or a business or anything like that. The purpose was to write a book. I wanted to write a book called Bright Line Eating. But in order for the book to reach as many people as possible, I needed an agent and a publisher, and that required that I have a following in advance. They called it a platform. I didn't even know what that was. I was literally Googling, what is a platform? And I read the options, podcast, speaking, platform, whatever. And the only platform that I could even fathom starting was an email list, because I was, at that time, the assistant chair of the psychology department. I was teaching 4 or 5 college classes every semester, and my kids were 5, 5, and 2. So as you can imagine, I was a little busy. And now I was trying to write a book. So the only thing I could really add to that was an email list. So I started an email list. That was August of 2014. And as I interacted with the people on my new little email list, I realized there was a need for some kind of program to walk them through their weight loss journeys. So I offered the first Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. That was in October of 2014. There were 40 people in it at first, and it just grew and grew from there. Bright Line Eating has grown exponentially, and our movement has grown exponentially. And we've amassed an incredible team of talented individuals who are as dedicated as I am to the Bright Line Eating mission of getting as many people as possible to their goal weight and keeping them there for the rest of their lives. So this is me now, although my hair's a little bit longer now. I'll go on camera for the Q&A part, but this is a picture of me taken about a year ago, I think. I've been slender now, like I said, for about 15 years. Size 4 jeans, 15 years. And going from obese to slender and staying that way for that long, I don't know if you know this, but almost nobody does that. This, statistically speaking, puts me in the top 1/100th of 1% of successful weight loss maintainers. And that's why I'm so compelled to teach people how to do what I did. And I have now coached so many people to do the same. With what's been impossible for so many people up until now is now possible. Okay, that's more than enough about me. Let's get back to you. Today, I want to share as much as I can with you about how I've stayed slim for 15 years and how I've helped thousands of people around the globe to lose weight and keep it off. We've got, I don't know, maybe 75 minutes together, and then time for Q&A after that. I will stay on for as long as you want. I will answer every question. But during the webinar portion here, I'm going to be sharing the 3 biggest reasons why people can't lose weight and keep it off. What are people struggling with? What are they doing wrong? Hundreds of millions of people. I'm gonna tell you about that statistic. Hundreds of millions of people try countless diets year after year. 2 billion people around the globe are now overweight or obese. And research shows that about half of them, 60% of the females and 40% of the males, are actively trying to do something about it at any given moment. So literally almost 1 billion people right now are trying to lose weight. In America, over 40% of people are now obese. 75% are overweight or obese. Hundreds of millions of people trying countless diets, but they're still overweight and obsessing about food and their bodies. What are they doing wrong? Okay. Each of the 3 reasons that I'm going to talk to you about today prevent people from losing weight, and they have to do with how the brain is wired. Now, remember, I'm a neuroscientist. My Ph.D. is in brain and cognitive sciences. So brain science is my specialty, but don't worry. I promise I will share these reasons in a way that's going to be super easy for you to understand. It's not going to be full of jargon, just a couple terms, but I will define them in a way that'll be really easy for you to understand. So what I'm going to do is count down the 3 biggest reasons people cannot lose weight, from number 3 down to number 2, down to number 1, and boom. Now, most importantly, I'm going to show you how to correct these mistakes so you can live happy, thin, and free. So please stick with me until the end. The number 1 point will change how you look at food and weight loss for the rest of your life. I promise you that. You won't want to miss it. And don't forget, if you stay until the end, you'll also receive that special free gift, why exercise will not make you thin. Okay, are you ready? Let's count down the 3 science-based reasons why most people struggle to achieve their ideal weight. The number 3 reason is because of something that I call powder addiction. Go ahead and write that down. You got it? Powder addiction. So what is powder addiction, and what powders am I referring to? The powders I'm talking about are right here: sugar and flour. Whether you know it or not, they are highly addictive. In fact, I will show you how sugar and flour act exactly like heroin and cocaine in the brain, and why foods made with these ingredients are so difficult to resist. So let's talk about cravings. Cake, donuts, pizza, chocolate, chips, all examples of foods that wreak havoc on weight loss efforts. Have you ever craved any of these foods? What you need to know about cravings is that they're all about motivation. Cravings are what drive people to eat things that they know are not the best or healthiest choices. Cravings are an addiction reward motivation pathway in the brain. Here's the pathway right here. The reward circuit, the addiction circuit, whatever you want to call it. The main driving force of cravings is what goes on in the nucleus accumbens, this little green part right here. Now, occasionally the prefrontal cortex, the purple part, can rein in a craving. But in certain cases, the addiction takes hold and the nucleus accumbens just wins out, and there's really nothing you can do about it. The craving takes over. So why does this happen? To understand, you need to know about a neurotransmitter you've probably heard of called dopamine. Now, a neurotransmitter is simply a chemical messenger in the brain. It basically just passes information from one brain cell to the next. So when a person does something that gives an addictive hit, the brain is flooded, that nucleus accumbens part of the brain is flooded with the neurotransmitter dopamine. Let's take 2 examples: pornography here on the left and donuts on the right. Both of them are unnaturally strong stimuli, meaning imagine our ancestors 100,000 years ago. They wouldn't have had access to stimuli these strong. Like, yes, sexual stimuli are rewarding and motivating to that part of the brain. But if you're in a tribe, what kind of access do you have? Nothing graphic like pornography. If you're going to be, snooping on naked people bathing in a river from a neighboring tribe, you're hiding behind a tree and maybe you catch a glimpse here and there. Like, you don't get access to the kind of graphic stuff that's on the internet today. Same with donuts. There's no way that you would get stimuli that strong 100,000 years ago. You might get some honey away from the bees once in a while, or maybe you'd be lucky and the berry bushes are in bloom, right? Berries would be like one of your sweetest foods. Today, berries are what we tell you to eat when you're trying to quit sweets, right? It's ironic. So we've manufactured stimuli today that are so strong for the nucleus accumbens. Then when that happens, whether the hit comes from pornography or from donuts, it doesn't matter. The dopamine receptors get flooded. Over time, they get blown out, and then they downregulate. In other words, they become less responsive and less numerous. So eating donuts is very similar to watching pornography from a brain-based perspective, really. When the brain is hit with excessive dopamine over and over and over again over time, the neural pathways begin to rewire. This would be fine if we planned to keep pummeling the brain with that much dopamine, meaning if a person keeps eating donuts, they will feel fine. The problem begins when the excessive pleasurable stimulus is taken away, or if you're not consuming it frequently enough, because the brain can't generate a big enough response anymore from the naturally occurring dopamine that it can, release on its own. The receptors aren't there anymore. So the brain enters a dopamine depleted state. Nothing feels good. Everything is itchy and uncomfortable, and boom, cravings hit. What people don't understand is that the addict isn't using to feel high. The addict is using to feel normal, just to get back to a baseline of some relief for a bit. These withdrawal symptoms from sugar and flour are just like the withdrawal symptoms from hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. And think about this for a minute. I speak from experience. I would know. They are. Okay, so how do you break the cycle? Well, the key is to stop flooding the brain with dopamine. This is the only way that it can heal. And that's the good news. The brain can heal. It does. I promise. So what does a person do if they're committed to stopping the flood of dopamine? The answer is simple. Stop eating the foods that create the flood in the first place. And the key to this is knowing which foods flood the brain with dopamine. And the foods that flood the brain with dopamine are sugar and flour. Remember these? Sugar and flour are drugs for the brain. Yes, drugs, literally drugs, for real. I want to illustrate for you and talk to you for a second about what drugs are, okay? So this is a drug. Yes, this is cocaine. What is cocaine? Where does it come from? Do you know? So if you said it comes from the coca leaf, you're right. Coca leaves grow on coca leaf bushes. Workers in the Andes Mountains chew them. They put these leaves in their cheek as they're hiking, and they get a little lift, like, maybe the equivalent of drinking half a cup of caffeinated tea. But a recent published scientific paper shows that chewing on coca leaves is not addictive, literally not addictive. However, if you take the inner essence of that coca leaf and you refine and you purify it into a fine powder, you get cocaine. It's the refining of the leaf that creates the addictive properties. Okay, do you know what this is? If you guessed heroin, you're right. Where does heroin come from? Do you know? If you said the poppy plant, you're right. Now you can sit in a field of poppies all day long and eat them all day long and not get addicted. You will fail a drug test for opioids, you will, but you won't get addicted and you won't get high. However, just like in my previous example, if you take the inner essence of the poppy plant and you refine and purify it into a fine powder, you create heroin, a highly addictive substance. The refining of the harmless plant is what turns it into an addictive drug. So to carry our analogy forward, what's this powder, right? Obviously, it's sugar. Where does sugar come from? Well, it comes from all kinds of things, right? Maybe you said sugar cane or beets or corn. In all cases, you're right. But in every case, the plant in its whole form is harmless, not addictive, not a drug. But again, when you take the inner essence of those plants and you refine and purify them into a fine powder, you create a highly addictive drug. Again, it's the refining and purifying process that creates a drug. And the same is true for flour. all the plants that all the varieties of flour are made from, I'm talking almonds and coconut and wheat and rice and potatoes, all of them, corn, legumes. You can make flour from so many things, potatoes. All of those plants are harmless in and of themselves, but when refined into a fine powder and turned into flour, they become addictive drugs. Look at how similar, for a second, the flour is to the cocaine. Isn't that crazy? The cocaine's above, the flour's right below. Could you even tell the difference if the picture of the flour didn't have the wheat and the bag for context? Now, I just want to note that people talk about wheat and gluten in regards to sensitivities and allergies, such as celiac disease, but I'm not talking about wheat and I'm not talking about gluten. It really can be any kind of flour from a drug perspective. It's the refining process that makes it addictive. Now, the underlying science behind what's going on is that anytime you extract the inner essence of a plant and then refine it into a powder, when the plant is refined, what you're doing is you're exponentially increasing the surface area of each molecule being exposed to the digestive enzymes. It's about surface area. Then fructose and glucose flood into the system super fast, and that impacts insulin, and this creates a dopamine rush. Let's look at the brain for a second and what this does. These are PET scans that show that overeating has the same effect as drugs. See the red area on the left? That's a healthy dopamine response to average stimulation. If someone's been doing cocaine, look in the middle now, a normal day isn't good enough because there's no red left. There's not enough dopamine. That person is not feeling good. They need a hit. Now, look at the obese brain, even less red, meaning less dopamine on a normal day, just on a normal day. So that person is off to get donuts. Again, not to get high, but to get normal. Back to these foods. How do you find out what foods people are addicted to? It's simple. Just ask them. Ask them, what foods do you drive across town in a snowstorm for? What foods do you crave the most? And we found out, scientists have asked people, it's cake, cookies, crackers, pizza, chocolate. It's foods made out of sugar and flour. So here's a question then. Why isn't everyone addicted? Given how brains interact with sugar and flour, and given the fact that 80% of the calories in the supermarket have added sugar alone in them, let alone flour, why aren't we all addicted? Why aren't we all obese? The answer is that drugs don't affect every brain the same way. Not everyone can get addicted. And I mean even to heroin and cocaine, literally. You don't believe me? Well, take, for example, someone being prescribed Vicodin after a back surgery. Some people take Vicodin as prescribed. Vicodin, if you don't know, is an opioid. It's not too dissimilar from heroin, okay? Some people will take that Vicodin as prescribed, and they're able to stop as soon as their pain has lessened. They might go through withdrawals. They might have developed tolerance. It doesn't matter. They're looking forward to stopping, and as soon as their pain goes down, they stop. But other people start to abuse the prescription, and before they realize it, they need more and more Vicodin to feel the same effect. They've become addicted. The reality is there's a range of addictive susceptibility in different brains to all drugs, including sugar and flour. So research shows there is a susceptibility scale for addiction. Now, I'm going to talk here specifically about food addiction, but it applies to all addictions. The susceptibility scale is a scale from 1 to 10. Now, research shows that 1/3 of the population is low on the scale. 1/3 is moderate, and 1/3 is high. That's research we did on a representative sample of people. It's also been done in rodents, and it's true for them too, and for all addictions. Now, for those low on the scale, people who are down in this range on the susceptibility scale, it's not hard for them to stop eating when they feel full. They rarely experience cravings, and they aren't spending much of their time or energy at all on food and weight concerns. They just don't think about it. Now, these people low on the scale may still be overweight just by eating too much tasty and unhealthy food, right? It's very easy these days to overeat. But it's not a dominating concern in their life, unless they develop a health problem, and then it's not that hard for them to change their eating. People who are in the mid-range on the scale sometimes struggle with their food and probably with their weight as well. They're no stranger to cravings, and they may be spending more of their life's focus on food and weight loss efforts than they would like. For people who are high on the scale, it's a different story entirely. Basically, no amount of food will satisfy them reliably. They're exhausted by the space that eating and weight loss take up in their life. They're likely experiencing powerful cravings and obsessions, a total loss of control every now and then, often enough to cause a problem, and possibly even painful binging. Now, not surprisingly, I'm a 10. Sometimes we call it a 10 plus 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 on the scale. Oh, and this might be the only time in life that being a perfect 10 is not a good thing. But because I'm a 10, when I've had enough food, my belly is usually satisfied, but my brain and my mouth want to keep eating, and I can't help myself. I do. Quantities become a real issue, really, no matter which foods I'm eating. I often say I'm a quantities girl. It's very important to know where you fall on the susceptibility scale. How susceptible are you to the pull of advertisements like this? Is it difficult for you to say no to donuts in the break room? Do you have a desire to stop for fast food even when dinner's waiting for you at home? Do you succeed at a new diet for a little while but then find yourself falling off the wagon just because you're at a social event and other people are eating other stuff? Do you find yourself craving a pint of ice cream in the freezer even if you've eaten a full and totally satisfying dinner? After an emotional or stressful day, have you ever decided to plunk on the couch and dig into junk food for comfort? After the day you've had, you deserve it, right? So how does the addictive cycle get broken? It may seem simple, and in some ways it is. The solution is to stop eating sugar and flour entirely. The solution is to establish a bright line for sugar and flour. What does that mean? Bright lines are clear, unambiguous boundaries that you just don't cross, like drawing a line in the sand. It's just like quitting smoking. If you were going to try to quit smoking, you wouldn't have one cigarette every once in a while. You would cut them out entirely with a bright line. Now, many people are horrified when I say this. They just cannot imagine never eating sugar or flour. Here's the thing, though. There are lots and lots of other foods. This is the hashtag Brightline Bites that's going around on the internet, right? People are posting their pictures of amazing foods that they're eating in Brightline Eating. Lots of delicious, filling, easy options. But people are so conditioned to go for that quick dopamine rush. So here's something I want you to try right now. Think about the food that you ate yesterday or earlier today, the last food you can remember eating. How much of those foods contain sugar or flour, or both? It's not about judgment, it's just about awareness. Most people don't realize how much sugar and flour they're eating, so awareness is the first step to eliminating it. Now, later in the webinar, I will share a few strategies for cutting out sugar and flour entirely. For now, let's move on to the big reason number 2. Are you ready? The second biggest science-based reason why people struggle to achieve their ideal weight is likely something you've never heard of before, unless you've read my book. It's called insatiable hunger. Okay, you know what insatiable means, right? It means like it just can't be satisfied, unsatisfiable. So when I say insatiable hunger, I'm not talking about, oh, I haven't eaten in 6 hours and my tummy is rumbling. I'm not talking about that kind of hunger. I'm talking about the kind of hunger where after eating a full dinner, someone will sit on the couch eating a bag of chips And when that's gone, go to the freezer for some ice cream. This is an entirely new kind of hunger, evolutionarily speaking. Our ancestors did not experience it ever. It's a weird kind of hunger, actually, because get this, it's not satisfied by eating. So why is this happening? Why can't people stop eating? The answer to why this is happening, this insatiable hunger, has to do with a hormone in the body called leptin. And these rats are about to explain this critical piece. But first, what is leptin? Leptin is the hormone that tells the body, I'm not hungry and I feel like exercising. Sounds like we could all use a little more of that, right? It's the hormone that makes us get active, to take all the fuel that we just consumed and use it to go ensure our evolutionary survival. Like go do something that will allow us to survive. Go build a hut or something. So back to these rats. The little guy on the right is a normal rat. He has plenty of leptin. The rat on the left was born without the gene that makes leptin. So his brain never gets the signal to stop eating or to start moving. In fact, the only way to get the big rat to move is to move his food trough, and then he will slowly waddle over to it to continue to eat. Poor guy. Oh. However, if you give him leptin injections, he will quickly start running around on the hamster wheel and get thin right away. Like, whoop, he'll just get thin. So researchers got super excited about this when they discovered leptin, and they started injecting people with leptin. They even put it in pills, but it didn't work. The researchers then were kind of stumped, but they decided to check whether people are even leptin deficient at all if they're too heavy. And it turns out it's the opposite. People are not like the fat rat. We have the gene that makes leptin. In fact, the fatter a person is, the more leptin they actually have circulating in their blood. That's because leptin is released by fat cells when they're nice and full. It's the thing that circles back to the brain and says, okay, we have enough fat stores now. You can stop eating and, take this opportunity again to go do something with this fuel that will, like gathering more food for next time, Okay. So the problem is that for people who have trouble losing weight and keeping it off, the problem is their brains cannot detect the leptin in their bodies. Why can't the brain see it? Well, the answer is that the leptin is being blocked, and this is called leptin resistance. Individuals with leptin resistance experience a lot of insatiable hunger. The signal to stop eating never comes. The brain just can't see it. Now, they're obese, but funny enough, if you take measurements, they show all the physiological markers of starvation. They're obese, but their brain thinks they're starving. Literally starving. So scientists figured all that out in about the mid-2000s, like 2004, 2005, 2006, those papers were published. They figured out what was blocking leptin too. This is the crux right here. You ready? What's blocking leptin is insulin. So people who flood their bodies with insulin by eating sugar and flour create an environment where insulin starts blocking leptin. And when leptin is blocked, the urge to move goes down and the urge to eat never goes away. Now, when I talk about insulin, I'm not talking about the spike in insulin levels that comes after eating a cookie. No. What the research shows is that baseline insulin levels have been rising dramatically in the current population. In fact, they're roughly twice as high as they were in the 1970s. Overall, baseline insulin levels are at an all-time historical high in developed countries. Even in our kids, baseline insulin levels have doubled compared to the 1970s. Without our knowledge, we are setting up many of our kids for type 2 diabetes. Right now, the stats are that a third of the human beings on this planet who are kids today will become diabetic. This is scary. It especially hits home for me as I think about my 3 little girls and their friends. So what do we do about it? The key to stopping insatiable hunger is to dramatically lower your baseline insulin levels. But how do you do that? Again, the solution is to use bright lines. Remember these? Bright lines are clear, unambiguous boundaries that are never crossed. We discussed the bright line for sugar and flour, and I shared the smoking analogy to illustrate the point. Here's another example. A recovering alcoholic can't drink in moderation. They have to eliminate alcohol entirely. There is no having a drink once in a while, or the entire addictive cycle is activated all over again. Okay, we've learned about powder addiction and insatiable hunger, the number 3 and number 2 reasons why people can't lose weight and keep it off long term. We've talked about the bright lines of no sugar and no flour. So are you ready to learn the number 1 reason why even the most committed, determined dieters cannot lose weight? Why people who have tried over and over continuously fail? The number 1 science-based reason why people can't lose weight on diets is because of something that I call the willpower gap. So please listen carefully. This is so critical. What I'm about to share with you is absolutely key to understanding how and why weight loss has proven so difficult, really impossible pretty much for just about everybody. So let's talk about willpower. Willpower is the thing in our brain that's supposed to help us make good choices, right? So here's the thing. Most people actually already know what they should and shouldn't be eating. Seriously. In my experience, people with food issues tend to be some of the most nutritionally educated people in the world. But forget about them. Even average people will score about 90% if you give them a flashcard quiz about what foods are good for them and what foods are not. People know, like in this picture, it's not ambiguous. People know what they should be eating. The issue is in implementation and execution over the long term. Seriously, the problem is in execution. Here's a perfect example. It's Friday night at the end of a busy week for a tired working mother. After wrangling the kids, will she be able to get produce out of the fridge and make a salad? Or will that working mother look at her spouse and say, "Do you think we should order a pizza?" To understand why this happens, you need to understand what willpower is. So what is willpower? Why is willpower unable to be activated, mobilized in that moment when that mom is considering ordering a pizza? Where is the willpower there? Well, it turns out that willpower is like a rechargeable battery with only 15 minutes of good solid charge. Can you imagine if your cell phone had only 15 minutes of charge? How brutal would that be? And it gets worse. Many activities throughout the day deplete your willpower. Things like parenting, checking email, making decisions, working, sitting in traffic, persevering on tasks, exercising, resisting temptations, regulating emotions, on and on and on. They all deplete willpower. To make things even worse for the dieter, willpower is fueled by brain glucose. So when blood sugar is low, which naturally happens at different times throughout the day, people are even more ineffective at making the right choice when it comes to food. Now, willpower is located in the brain right here in this blue part, the anterior cingulate cortex, right behind the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain simply craps out when the willpower battery is low, and it creates what I call the willpower gap. Everyday stressors tax willpower. People are likely to fall into this huge gap between what they promised themselves they'd be doing with food and what they're actually deciding to do with food. Does that ring a bell? Let's look at it this way. Let's say you've had a long, stressful day at work and you know there's no food in the house. So you stop at the grocery store on the way home, but instead of picking up healthy ingredients to make a meal, like you know you should, the prepared meal section draws you in and you end up having Chinese food. So what's the fix? How can falling into the willpower gap be avoided? It's not like people can completely eliminate all stress from their lives, right? And I don't even want you to try to do that. Stress is necessary. Stop checking email, stop taking care of your kids, stop having any kind of meaningful relationships lest you have arguments. Can you imagine? No, right? So what is the solution? The solution has to come from the other side. And the solution is to automate your food, to take your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, and its tendency to block your efforts out of the equation. For example, do you stress a lot about brushing your teeth? Do you have a sticky note on your mirror in your bathroom that says, don't forget to brush your teeth today? Do you have a checklist to remind you to brush your teeth? I bet you don't. I bet you don't stress about brushing your teeth all that often. Why? Because it's an automatic habit that you have learned to do morning and night, whether you feel like it or not. Eating the right things needs to become as automated as brushing your teeth. This is the only way to take willpower out of the equation because automatic behavior sequences are governed by a different part of the brain entirely. And in a moment, I'll show you exactly how to do this. For now, let's review what we've learned. The 3 reasons why people can't lose weight and keep it off are powder addiction. Sugar and flour act like drugs in the brain, so they have to be eliminated entirely because they're drugs. So we don't engage with drugs. Next up, insatiable hunger. People are eating foods loaded with sugar and flour, which floods their bodies with insulin. Insulin is blocking leptin, and that creates insatiable hunger, a kind of hunger that's never satisfied by eating. That hunger never goes away. And finally, the willpower gap. Willpower is like a battery with only 15 minutes of charge, and it's constantly being depleted. So when it comes time to make a healthy food choice, you fall into the gap between what you know you should eat and what you inevitably actually choose to eat. So now you know these reasons. And what can you do about them? Listen carefully, because this is the most exciting part of the webinar. I'm going to go deep now and teach you exactly how to get your brain working for you when it comes to weight loss. Are you with me? Okay, before we start, humor me for a second, okay? We've been sitting here for a long time now. So let's just get up for a second with me. I mean, literally, stand up and move for just a quick second before we tackle this next section. I'm getting up too. Can you hear me? I'm standing up now. Okay, you can stretch, shake, jump up and down a little bit. Oh, I'm bending backwards and stretching. Oh, that feels good. Stretch with me. Oh, even if you're pooping out and still sitting there, stretch your arms to the right, to the left, back up over your head. Ooh, okay. That's good, isn't it? Okay. You ready to refocus? Okay, here we go. Here is a scary statistic, just like we needed another one of those, right? By 2030, 50% of Americans will be obese, not overweight, obese. Obese. By then, probably 85% of Americans will be overweight or obese, almost everybody. We're at 40% obesity now. I don't know if you knew that. It just crossed 40% like a hot second ago. 2030, that's not that long from now. So why is this so serious? It's not just about how it feels to be overweight. I know that feeling really well, and it's very, very hard. Shopping for clothes is hard. Getting dressed in the morning when nothing feels right or looks right is hard. Trying to keep up with life when you're exhausted is hard. I remember when I got to my heaviest, I couldn't really tie my shoes anymore. I mean, I could, but I had to suck in my breath, and it was really painful and hard to get on shoes. I couldn't really touch my feet. So I stopped buying shoes with ties. I started buying these slip-on shoes that I didn't have to touch at all to get them on my feet. But here's what's even scarier. 63% of people are dying prematurely from diet-related diseases, things they didn't have to die from at all. 63%. Overweight people are gravely shortening their lifespans. Now I'd like to tell you a quick story about my friend Lyndon Morris Del Rio. She's one of my best friends in the world now. She actually works for Bright Line Eating now. She was 188 pounds at her highest. This is not a picture of her during that time. She's like me. She has no pictures of herself during that time. This is her like in the 160s, like 20, 30, 40 pounds below her highest weight. Lyndon is one of the smartest, most motivated women I know, but she just could not lose her weight. She tried an endless number of diets, and she was thoroughly disheartened and disillusioned. She felt honestly like a fraud and a failure in her life. Every day, Lyndon would go to sleep at night promising herself that the next day would be different, that she would make the right choices with food, and she never did, even though she'd started experiencing potentially fatal heart events on a regular basis, and they terrified her. Okay, we're going to come back to Lyndon's story in a little while. So here's the thing. It's not just about weight and the serious health consequences of being obese. Here's something I really need you to understand. 22% of slender people qualify as full-blown food addicts. How are they slender then? Well, they're using strategies. They're purging. They're over-exercising. They're using laxatives. They're obsessing all day about that one thing of low-fat frozen yogurt that they're going to have, and they can think about nothing else. I'll tell you this, thin by itself is pretty worthless. Yeah, I got thin when I was doing crystal meth for a hot second. It's worthless. Thin by itself without happy and free is worthless. How much time do so many people spend thinking about what they've eaten or not eaten, whether they're on their plan or off their plan? How many miles, how many calories, how many pounds? What could the world be if all of these people, nearly 1 billion people, were thinking instead about how they could give back to the world, how they could love their friends and family better, how they could become better people, and instead they're thinking about how to lose weight? I mean, what would you do with all the mental and emotional energy that's tied up with worrying about your body and your weight? Isn't anything preferable to thinking about your food and your weight constantly? How would it feel to truly be free? And how would it feel to find a solution that not only gets you into a right-sized body, but completely frees you up from having to think about it at all? Here's what I've found in my years of experience. It's almost impossible to get there without the proper tools. It's almost impossible to get your brain on board without an entire system. People spend a lot of time, and I did myself, trying to think their way into a solution. If that were going to work, wouldn't it have worked already? Trying to figure this thing out by following whatever, a certain diet or a certain exercise routine or any number of tactics, it doesn't work. Remember this statistic? Fewer than 1% of people lose the weight and keep it off. We've accepted this as normal, but it's not normal. Nothing with a 99% failure rate is normal. Nobody wants to be stuck. Nobody wants to be stuck in that cycle of failure. I really, personally, truly know what it's like to feel hopeless when it comes to weight loss. I was succeeding at everything in my life at that point. The point of the before picture over here. I was excelling, truly. I was a star student in a renowned Ph.D. program. I'd just run a marathon. I had a wonderful husband and was happily married. I had tons of good friends. Everything was going great, but I couldn't get my weight down. I just couldn't do it. Remember, this is what I looked like, not even close to my highest weight. This is what I looked like when I was training for a marathon. I couldn't get it. I just couldn't lose the weight. But then I discovered bright lines. I lost all my excess weight, and most importantly, I found a freedom from all that food obsession. and I truly started to live happy, thin, and free. So now what I want to do is help all the people who are walking in my footsteps so that they don't have to feel hopeless anymore. And that's why I've made it my mission to share the solution with as many people as possible. And that's why I created the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. The Bright Line Eating Bootcamp is the way I've helped tens of thousands of people to shed their excess weight and keep it off. This is the exact program that I use. The Bright Line Eating Bootcamp is an 8-week, completely online virtual course. You can do the entire program from the comfort of your own home. And I want to share with you a little bit about the bootcamp. And I'm also going to share 7 specific strategies that you can implement today to start losing weight that you will keep off long term. I'm going to call these strategies out. I'm going to mention them, okay, as I go through the details of the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. So will you go grab a pen if you don't have one already? Grab a pen and be ready. I'm going to share with you 7 key strategies, okay? Now, back to the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. What is it exactly? Well, the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp is changing the future of weight loss. You can do it from anywhere. People have successfully completed the program from over 105 countries on the earth. I don't know if you know this, there's 195 countries on planet Earth. People in 190 of them have watched my videos. People from 105 have taken the boot camp. Unreal. I can't even name 105 countries, not even close. I've actually tried. It's pretty pathetic. I don't know, you try. You probably do better than I would. People lose a lot of weight in just 8 weeks. In fact, on average, during the 8-week boot camp, participants lose 17 pounds per person. The vast majority keep losing weight after the boot camp ends. And here's the critical thing. Almost all maintain their weight loss. In fact, we have preliminary 2-year data from our research program. From the preliminary data, it looks like 85% of people doing the Bright Line Eating boot camp 2 years out then maintain their weight loss. And that's simply unheard of. 85% is unheard of. So how do we do it? Well, there are a few ways that we support you. First of all, the Bright Line Eating program is delivered to you through 8 weeks of educational videos. In the bootcamp, I've distilled my years of education, including almost a decade teaching a college course on the psychology of eating, information that you can't get anywhere else. That was a custom course that I designed. I don't teach it anymore, but now I teach the bootcamp, and a lot of that science is folded into the modules of the bootcamp. I've distilled all my years of education into the most potent bits of information that will help you set up the habits that you need to catapult you into your right-sized body. In the videos, you'll learn everything you need to know so that you can begin to incorporate the program into your life. We will start you off with so much valuable information in the first week during what we call the clean start process. I will cover exactly what you need to do to get started on the right foot, including how to get set up for success, how to get started with your new daily practices. We also talk about what to expect in the weight loss phase. As I mentioned earlier, bootcamp participants lose an average of 17 pounds per person in those first 8 weeks. Many people lose much more. I forget what our record is, but it's pretty high. It's pretty, basically the more you weigh coming in, the more you're likely to lose. But it varies, but yeah, the high is pretty high. So there's some important things you'll need to be prepared for during this time, but I'll make sure that you're ready with that clean start process. One of my favorite teaching modules takes place during week 2, actually. In week 2, we cover important information like how often to weigh yourself, the psychology of that, what to tell your friends and family, how to formulate what we call an emergency action plan for when you experience temptations so you don't get derailed by those, and so much more. Every question and topic you can think of will be covered in these modules. You will have perfect clarity about setting up your physical environment and your support systems for success. Just sort of going through, there's so much that I've poured my heart into this boot camp. I also love the last video module, which happens in week 8. By this point, you will be well on your way to living happy, thin, and free. By week 8, over 80% of people aren't experiencing any cravings anymore ever. They report that their eating has gotten easier. That's almost 90% of people. And their confidence that they're going to succeed is sky high. In the week 8 modules, we really go deep. We talk about things like grieving our old lives, which is necessary, and gratitude and the science of that, and how these fit into our Bright Line Eating journey. We also cover how to incorporate exercise back into your life. During the boot camp, when your body and brain are adjusting to a new way of eating, adding exercise is not helpful. In fact, it can derail your program. This is one of the strategies I mentioned earlier. Don't start an exercise program when you're trying to lose weight. Write that down. Don't start an exercise program when you're trying to lose weight. Now, I realize this is probably not what you've been told in the past, but trust me, there's plenty of science backing that up. And you can read all about the details if you stay until the end of this webinar and collect your free gift, Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin. But for now, suffice it to say, in week 8, we talk about reincorporating exercise if you want to, and the science of exactly when and how to do that. In addition to the video modules, you will get so many other systems to support you. Let me just go through them really quickly here. One of the essential things you'll get as soon as you join the boot camp is called the Rapid Release Weight Loss System. This is the exact system I personally used to lose 60 pounds in 6 months. It works for people who are diabetics, if you're gluten-free, if you're plant-based, if you're nutritarian, paleo, any eating approach you can think of. There is nothing that we can't work with, unless your doctor is telling you that you need to eat cookies every night. Okay, just kidding. No doctor says that, to my knowledge. So do you remember how I mentioned the importance of automating your food and how knowing what and when to eat is critical to avoiding the willpower gap? Okay, this right here, the Rapid Release Weight Loss System, is the system that will ensure that you know exactly what you should be eating and when for both optimal weight loss and for achieving automaticity. Our plan helps you achieve automaticity like no other plan. This is tip number 2, right? Number 2 right here. Tip number 2 is automaticity. And the best way to achieve automaticity is with specific categories and quantities of food. Categories and quantities, not calories, not macros. It's about categories like vegetable, protein, fruit, fat. Those are grain. Those are categories. And specific quantities, 6 ounces, 1 apple, 8 ounces, okay? That is the formula that produces automaticity. Calories and macros never produce automaticity, okay? That's tip number 2. But if you don't want to figure out how to do that exactly, specifically, that's what the Rapid Release Weight Loss System is for. We've figured it out for you. You don't have to think about it at all. Automaticity. You also get live group coaching in the boot camp. These customized care weekly group coaching calls are live, and you can submit questions in advance to help you with anything that comes up during your weight loss journey. All the calls are recorded in case you need to miss one or you want to go back and listen again. They're also varied in terms of when they're presented, so there will always be calls that work in your time zone. You live in New Zealand, not a problem. You live in South Africa, not a problem. You live in Germany, not a problem. You live in Russia, not a problem. You live in America, not a problem. There is such value in hearing other people's questions. It will blow your mind, even if they're not your own questions, because they will often bring up issues that then you realize you've been facing too, and you get the solution right there as well. Next up is the online connection and conversation community. Now, in my opinion, this piece is the best part of the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. We provide participants with a private online support community that is available to you to answer your questions and give you support in the moment 24/7. Our online connection and conversation community is second to none. If you've been in the BLE Food Freedom Fest Facebook group 2018, you've experienced a taste of that already. That's why we put up that group, because it's mind-blowing how helpful it is. If you're not in that group, you can go join it now. It's an open group. It's only going to be available till Friday. It's being shut down on Friday when the bootcamp registration is closing and the bootcamp is starting. Again, the name of the group is BLE Food Freedom Fest 2018, and you can find it on Facebook. The very best way to handle temptations that come up is to lean into the community. Remember when we talked about willpower and how you can't rely on it to make good food choices? This is my third tip for you. You ready? Write it down. What does work is to get social support. Reach out to someone who understands. That's what works. And it's something you can do anytime, anywhere, whether you're at a party with sugar and flour-laden foods everywhere you look, or you're on your way home from work and you're tempted to stop at the nearest fast food drive-thru. You can reach out for social support. Here's what research shows. Actually, social support replenishes our 15 minutes of willpower, that rechargeable battery. It recharges the battery, literally. Social support works. I'm literally talking about texting a supportive friend, calling a supportive friend, logging into that Facebook group. It works. Okay, that was tip number 3. For a lot of people, they're concerned that their mindset will trip them up. And you're right, your mindset is super important. Do you remember how I talked about how stress relates to the willpower gap? A healthy mindset is going to make everything even easier. So if you enroll in our bootcamp, you will receive the Mastering Mindset module so that your inner gremlins will not sabotage your progress. A lot of people worry, what if I fall off track? I don't think I could be perfect at this. Well, here at Bright Line Eating, we have a newsflash for you. We don't expect you to be perfect. We expect you to commit to being unstoppable. There is a difference. Letting go of the notion of perfection will help you with everything in your life. The Simply Resume system, and we spell it that way for a reason. Yes, I know that's misspelled. No, it's the way we spell it in Bright Line Eating. Resume has zoom in it. Zoom as in quickly. You resume quickly, fast. Zoom. It's a system that helps you get back on track if you cross your bright lines. We don't expect you to be perfect and then leave you on your own if you cross your bright lines. If you blow it. Sometimes we blow it, right? We teach you what to do then. We anticipate that might happen. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to most people. And then we tell you what to do, and we help you practice getting back on track really effectively. The Simply Resume system will teach you how to have compassion for yourself and get your food dialed back in as it gently guides you back onto your path. This is the number 4 tip that I want to give you, that the key to resuming is self-compassion. Not beating yourself up, self-compassion. But we don't just tell you how to have self-compassion, right? That's really easy, right? Be nice to yourself. Well, yeah, now I get to beat myself up because I'm so mean to myself. Instead, we teach you how to have self-compassion. I'm going to share more about this in a second, okay? Everything about this program is set up to ensure your success. Okay, let's talk about the investment. One way to get started with Bright Line Eating used to be to hire me personally. Due to the size of Bright Line Eating now and my extremely limited availability, my rate has gone up so high that it's not possible for most people. I charge $50,000 to personally guide someone through the program. That's by interview only, and to be honest, I only do it these days with only 1 or 2 people a year, if that. Now, you can also get this information by hiring a Bright Line Eating coach. We have several amazing senior coaches on staff who can hold your hand every step of the way, and they do that for people. The investment for this option is $7,000. Now, I'm not going to make a formal offer for this option, but if you'd like to learn more, you can go to the following website. You have your pen in your hand, so write this down if you're interested. You go to support.brightlineeating.com. The website again is support, S-U-P-P-O-R-T, support.brightlineeating.com. And there's a form that you can fill out there. Okay, so to register for the boot camp, the investment always used to be $997. When more people started signing up for the boot camp, we were able to bring that investment level way down, which is what we wanted to do. In fact, we've been able to cut it in half. So the investment now is just $497. We wanted to make it available for more people. That's right. If you register right now, The boot camp is only $497. I want to make it as easy as possible for you to take advantage of this offer because you get the identical systems and materials that you would working with a private coach, but you also receive the social support from others working through the program. And in my opinion, the community is where the magic happens. Seriously, in my opinion, the $497 option is actually in your best interest. It's the best way to do bright line eating. Seriously, not joking. It is the best way to do bright line eating. Now, if you want to invest in this program, you can go ahead. I got to do something here. I got to make sure that you have something to click. Here we go. It should say secure my spot now. That's what you click on. The secure my spot now button on your screen. Okay. And when you go there, there are also installment options if you prefer to make payments, but the $497 is the best value. Okay, I just want to take a second to tell you about my friend Tara, if that's okay. Look at her. Can you believe that? Her story is simply amazing. Tara started Bright Line Eating not that long ago in my memory at 381 pounds. At her highest weight, she weighed more than 400 pounds. In fact, her scale couldn't even measure her weight because it just said OL for over limit. Tara did a ton of inner work before she started Bright Line Eating, and she worked with a counselor for almost 20 years. But despite trying to lose weight countless times with a variety of different programs, she never in her life lost more than 30 pounds at one time or stuck to a weight loss program for more than 3 months. Never. Then Tara found Bright Line Eating. She lost 150 pounds in her first year. By her first year and a half, that total was up to 196 pounds lost, and she reached the milestone of having lost more weight than she now weighs. She's kept that weight off for more than a year and a half now. But Tara's story is about so much more than weight. Tara can now sit in a booth at a restaurant. She's more available to her son. She's completely changed her career path. She started swimming again. She was a competitive athlete in her teens. She was a competitive swimmer. She loves being in the water. She never used to put on a bathing suit at 400 pounds. She loves swimming again. Her life has completely changed. She is living truly happy, thin, and free. I want this for you. I want you to be one of our Bright Line Eating success stories too. So I have a couple more special things to share with you. They're bonuses that you get if you register for the boot camp right now. The first thing you'll get if you register for boot camp before we close down registration is the official Bright Line Eating e-cookbook. This is the only official Bright Line Eating cookbook that exists currently, and we've partnered with Katie May to bring it to you. If you go onto Amazon, there's a bunch of garbage, baloney, hacker supposedly Bright Line Eating cookbooks. They even put sugar and flour in their recipes. It's ridiculous. This is the only Bright Line Eating cookbook that exists at the moment, and you can only get it by signing up for the boot camp. People rave about how much they love this e-cookbook. It truly makes it easy to prepare quick, delicious Bright Line meals. When you invest in the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, I'm going to give you that Bright Line Eating Cookbook as a free gift. It's valued at $30, but it's worth a lot more. So go ahead and register. Just click Secure My Spot now. The next special gift included today will help you navigate a problem that many of our clients experience. If you've been dieting for a long time, you might not even know what your ideal weight is anymore. Or perhaps you can't even imagine that you can get any sort of desirable weight outcome from any program ever. You're not alone. A lot of people have questions about their goal weight. But we will help you chart your course with what we call the goal weight guidance system. This is going to teach you how to calculate what your goal weight is, how to get there, and how to stay there. This is normally a $75 value, but when you register for this boot camp, you will get the goal weight guidance system as my gift to you. And another bonus. Look at this. A lot of people think that healthy eating is too time consuming. The effort it takes to prepare meals is just, they're dreading it. It's going to take too long. You're busy? I get it. I so get being busy. We all are. I have 3 little kids. I certainly couldn't do this if I had to be in the kitchen working for hours and hours every day. But you are going to learn a new way to think about preparing meals with Brightline Eating. And it's going to come in the 5-minute meals menu. It will make sticking to bright lines quick and simple for busy lives. Now, this is another $75 value. If you register now, to help you with those time challenges, you will get the 5-minute meals menu immediately, absolutely free. I have another bonus for you. Travel. Travel can be difficult when you're trying to stick to a food plan, and we know that you're going to travel. We don't expect you not to. The problem with so many diets is that they're not portable, but that's why we don't call Brightline Eating a diet. It's not a temporary fix. It's a complete lifestyle change, so you have to be able to travel. And with the Meals on the Move travel tips system, you're going to learn how to travel anywhere in the world and stay on track with Brightline Eating. So the Meals on the Move travel tips is a $75 value, but you will get it as a free bonus if you register now. And another bonus. Look at this. It's crazy. One of the most common concerns that I hear from people is that they don't think that they can make it through social engagements without breaking their bright lines. And it's true. So many people deviate from other kinds of food plans during special occasions, right? It's so tempting. Maybe it's a wedding or a holiday or a potluck or a work event or a birthday party. But here at Brightline Eating, we have a whole system in place to prevent this from happening. The Surviving Special Occasions system will teach you exactly how to handle social eating and holidays. And it works whether your friends and family are on board or supportive or not. So you can succeed even if your spouse or kids are indifferent or hostile or not doing the program with you. It doesn't matter. It's a complete system that works. And this system is also valued at $75, and this is another free bonus you will receive with the Brightline Eating Bootcamp. Okay, another bonus. Are you afraid you won't be able to eat out in restaurants if you're following the program? If so, you're not alone. I hear this concern a lot. Part of what contributes to failure with diets is that feeling of being deprived. I want you to be happy, thin, and free, and the happy part is non-negotiable. Who's going to stick with a way of eating if they're not happy? I know I never did. I want you to know that eating out does not have to be an issue. You can enjoy delicious, satisfying meals in any kind of restaurant. And the effortless eating out system will teach you how to enjoy a meal in any and every kind of restaurant. I mean any. Thai, steakhouse, Mediterranean, Japanese, doesn't matter, anything. It is so important to be able to live in the world and not feel guilty. So the effortless eating out system is valued at $75, but you will get it for free when you register for the bootcamp. Look at all this value. Okay. Now, finally, I know that money is a concern for most people. There are many people out there who think, and I hear this everywhere, that healthy eating is too expensive. You know what? It's just not true. We've done the math. We have converted something, I don't know, whatever, a couple 100,000 people now to healthy eating. And the reality is we ask them, what happened to your grocery bill? And the average reduction we've seen is 30 to 35% in the grocery bills of people who really budget. They know what they spend on groceries. When they start doing Brightline Eating, they spend 30 to 35% less. But that's not all. They spend 80 to 90% less on restaurants. And since in the modern Western world, we're eating half of our food outside the home, if you do the math, 30 to 35% on the grocery bill and 80 to 90% on the restaurant bill, that combines to a 60% reduction on all the money a person is spending on food in total. That is a lot of savings if you add it up. Huge savings, not trivial at all. As a matter of fact, by the time the bootcamp is over, it is likely to have already paid for itself. And my $5 meals guide teaches you how to do bright line eating on even the most slender budget. You will easily be able to prepare delicious, healthy, bountiful meals for less than you would spend at the dollar menu on some kind of drive-through. All right, $5 or less for every single meal. Some of these meals, $1.50, $1.75, $1.66, super, super, super budget conscious. Now, the $5 meals menu will save you a ton of money, valued at $75, but if you register now, I'm going to include it also for free. Okay, this might be the most exciting announcement of all. The program is 8 weeks, but I will give you 2 weeks at the end for free. 2 additional weeks. And in those 2 weeks at the end, what we do is we give you a deep dive on the content that you need to transition to maintenance. It's a maintenance mindset module. How many times, I hear this from so many people, have you lost your weight down to goal weight and then stayed there for like a day until you started gaining your weight back? Maintenance is an entirely different mindset. And in these 2 free weeks, I take you on a deep dive of the psychology of what we call the maintenance dance, the maintenance mindset module. So take a look at this. This package is worth $1,602, and you can get it all right now for just $497. Just $497. You can click on the Secure My Spot Now button to take advantage. And if you're still on the fence, I have one more thing to tell you that may be a game changer. We're offering 3 more bonuses right now as a package that will never be offered again. The first is a deep dive workshop on the science of self-compassion. Remember when I said that the crux to resuming is self-compassion? And I said that I was going to teach you how to have self-compassion, not just tell you to have more self-compassion, which literally just makes you beat up on yourself more for being mean to yourself. Just recently, I delivered an entire workshop on the science of self-compassion. It was completely revolutionary and life-changing. There is no way to get access to this material any way other than signing up for the boot camp right now. The second limited time bonus is something I haven't done since the very first few boot camps were rolled out in 2015 and 16. We currently have fabulous coaches that do the group coaching calls during the boot camps, but for this moment only, this boot camp only, I'm going to do 2 additional live group coaching calls. So you'll get all the regular group coaching calls plus these 2 special calls with me. It's going to be so much fun. And finally, everyone who purchases a boot camp right now and finishes it and completes the last day experience, you got to make it through the boot camp, will be entered to win one one-on-one coaching session with me. I told you how much it costs to hire me as a coach, so you can imagine the value of this package. It is tremendous. Okay. I want to give you a moment to make your decision. So let's get back to Lyndon. Do you remember everything that she tried? Hopeless diet after hopeless diet? Well, when her hope had nearly run out, Lyndon found Bright Line Eating. And Lyndon was in the very first boot camp that we ever offered in 2014, that boot camp that had 40 people in it. And here is Lyndon now. She's now been in a right-sized body for over 4 years. And most importantly, she doesn't obsess about her food any longer. She is free. Truly, truly happy, thin, and free. I want that for you too. So you may be thinking, but will I be able to do it? I don't know. The answer is yes. Yes, and it gets easier and easier over time. In fact, at the end of the boot camp, almost 90% of people will say that their eating has gotten easier and that they are confident that they will reach their goals. How does that happen when diets usually get harder over time, not easier? The answer is that with Bright Line Eating, remember, we get your brain on board. Your insulin levels will come down. right? That's going to stop blocking leptin. So your brain is going to stop telling you to overeat, and it's going to start telling you to take walks and get active. Your dopamine receptors will replenish, so your cravings will disappear. Your willpower muscle will strengthen. Your habits will become automatic. Your hunger is going to disappear because leptin's on board. You will literally rewire your brain for food freedom. But I know that you may still have hesitations. I know, because I tried everything too. I know what it feels like. You might be a little shell-shocked from all this information. You might have promised yourself to never try anything again. So if that's the case, what I want you to do is I just want you to try Bright Line Eating for 30 days. You can get 100% of your money back in the first 30 days. No questions asked. So what that means is that you click secure my spot now. You go click that right now, and I'll tell you what's going to happen. 30 days from now, you will either be feeling so different from now, it will blow your mind. Your confidence will have soared. You'll be thinking to yourself, she was right. It actually works. This is like nothing I've ever done in my life. I finally found it. Look at that hot dog. I found the answer. So now I want to ask you, how good would it feel to finally be in a right-sized body, to enjoy getting dressed, to feel confident, to feel like you were succeeding in your life at last, to be able to move more freely, to love how you look in the mirror, to feel like you're finally feeling courageous about trying new things in your life and moving past your weight problem forever? And your new weight is not the best part. Wouldn't it be absolutely life-changing to free your mind from its obsession with food? I want you to look at these happy faces. Look at the faces. The real transformation on offer is best captured in these photos. These are just a few of the pictures from our Food Freedom Fest 2018 Facebook group. That Facebook group comes down at the end of this week. And if you've been in there, the love and support you've been experiencing, that's what it's like to be in the boot camp. If any of this has resonated with you, I invite you to listen to your highest self. What is it telling you to do? And if it's telling you to take the leap, to just trust, just in case this is for real and it works, I want you to click secure my spot now and get started. Don't you dare miss out on this incredible opportunity to step into your right-sized body and your right life and learn how to live happy, thin, and free. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. I know your time is so valuable, so I hope you feel that this was time well spent. Your free gift, Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin, let me just check to make sure it is available. We need to put it right at the top of the chat thread. We will do that right now. My tech guy, Steven, should be in here putting, so that free gift I promised you, Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin, we're going to change the pinned message at the top of the chat thread. We are going to enable the chat thread. I can do that right now. You can start typing questions into the chat thread. And in a moment, I'll mention it when it's there. The link will be on a sticky note at the top of the chat thread, and then you can click there to get your copy of that report I mentioned, Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin, because you are here to the end. Thank you again so much for spending this time with me. So go ahead, the chat thread is enabled. You can go ahead and answer questions, and I'm going to message Steven here. Exercise bonus, hello. Put it at the top of the chat thread. Hello, hello, blue, hello. Boom, it's there. Perfect. Click here to download your free Why Exercise Won't Make You Thin PDF. So that's the link that you click, and then you can download it. Elizabeth says, thank you, Susan. Okay. Andre says, could you provide some tips for those skinny who, on the contrary, struggle to gain weight, on how to do that with the help of neuroscience? Okay, so yes, there are some men, mostly men. Sometimes women, but this is usually men who are trying to gain weight and they can't seem to do that. So my understanding, there are programs online that are from people who have had that experience. My understanding is that the key is actually to just eat enough food and lift enough weights. It's that combination. You're not eating enough food and you're not lifting weights hard enough. That's the key to putting on weight. The neuroscience of that is not something I'm an expert in. But who would I recommend you follow? You know what? Let me just message my friend. I have a friend who's in that position. Let's see if he can respond back early enough. Hey, what's the name of those guys you follow online who help skinny guys gain weight? Yeah, there's a program that I've seen that's really effective. So Andre, when I hear back, if I hear back quickly enough from my friend, I will let you know. But the key is eating enough food and lifting enough weights. Lori says, I joined the boot camp yesterday. Will I still get the 2 weeks free? Yes, Lori. If you joined the boot camp yesterday, so when I say this boot camp, I mean people who are registering right now, joining yesterday, you are good. All of the bonuses that I talked about, you joined in the window to get them. Beth says, hi, Susan. Thank you for the webinar. You gave us 4 of the 7 strategies. Could we get the rest? You know what, Beth? I noticed that too. And I got to say, my content team and I were working on revamping this webinar sort of content and slides and everything up until the last moment. And I think that 7 was a typo. I was noticing, wait a second, 7, that sounds like a lot. I wonder if they added a few more for me, like as I was taking a shower this morning. And then I noticed I got to the end 4. I thought there were 4. So I think 7 was a typo. So I'm going to be shooting a vlog in the next 24 hours that's going to be coming out tomorrow. And I promise that I will share 3 more strategies for you, okay? In that vlog. So go ahead, and the vlog gets released at brightlineeating.com, and there's a tab blog at the top of brightlineeating.com. So yeah, this is the first time I've given this webinar live. We just redid the whole thing. And I'm super embarrassed to say this, but I think that 7 was a typo, that we only had 4 and they didn't add 3 more while I was showering. So sorry. Okay. Marjo says, do I have to cut out honey, and why? Living in Greece, we have the best honey produced here. Very healthy. Yes, Marjo, this is one of the things. Sometimes the recommendations for brain health go beyond and are contrary to health, right? So yes, you need to cut out honey. The reason why is that it's too concentrated in its sweetness. And when the addictive centers in the brain are blown out, that nucleus accumbens has experienced that downregulation, there's 2 pathways that keep the brain from healing. One is a flood of fructose or glucose into the brain, into the bloodstream, that's too rapid, that leads to an insulin surge. That's one of the pathways that leads to a dopamine rush. The other pathway is through sweet taste on the tongue itself. And that sweet taste on the tongue has a direct connection to the addictive centers in the brain, and that, my dear, will keep your brain from healing. So honey actually is a double whammy. It affects both pathways. And so your brain will not heal. You will not get over your cravings if you keep eating honey. So yes, I know it's healthy. Another similar thing would be cacao, which is like the powder form of chocolate. Even if it doesn't have sugar in it, that cacao powder is going to trigger dopamine cravings. And a dopamine release that's going to keep your brain from healing. So, yes, I get that it's healthy. A glass of red wine is another similar thing, right? Wait, but red wine, blah, 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 it, leads to a longer life. Yeah, well, it also leads to food cravings, because alcohol is molecularly almost equivalent to sugar. It is sugar with an ethanol compound added to it, which just makes it sugar plus intoxication, which is even worse. So those are 3 examples of things that are healthy, but will keep your brain from healing, will lead to your cravings lasting forever and ever and ever, and you don't want that. So that's why, my dear, great question. Andre, I have an answer for you already from my friend. He was right on his cell phone. So I'm gonna tell you what it is. It's Bointo Beastly. Bony. Bony to Beastly is what it's called. Bony, Bony, to T-O, Beastly, BEASTLY.com. I'm going to type it in. Bony to Beastly.com. That's my best suggestion for someone wanting to gain weight, like someone wanting to bulk up. Okay. Let's see here. Lots of questions. I'm just looking here. Oh, wow. I'm behind. Wow, lots of questions. Holy smokes. Okay. Okay. I can't believe. Okay. All right. I got Andre's question. I got Lori's question. Beth's question, the honey question. Lois said, how are the portions determined? You know what, Lois, a long time ago, I did many different 12-step food programs, lots of different ones. And I got different food plans from different sponsors. And I just, over the years, kind of distilled it into sort of a synthesis that was pretty much what I was passing down to the people I was helping lose weight, and I refined it, and that's now the food plan that I pass down to you. So that's how the portions got determined, really through trial and error. Edna says, thank you, Susan. Tin says, powder is a drug. So lentil flour is a drug. How about when I cook lentils and then I mix them into a sauce? Is it the same thing? Sauces are tricky, depends on what's in them. If they're not very caloric, like mostly just spices, then they can work. If they've got ingredients that would count as a fat in bright line eating, then you need to weigh and measure that. So that depends. Some sauces are bright line friendly and some are not. Okay, Kathy says, in spite of no sugar or flour for many years, I still binge sometimes. Is this still leptin resistance? No, leptin resistance isn't binging. Dopamine depletion is binging. So that's still dopamine downregulation. There's a good book called Brain Over Binge that you might enjoy, Kathy. I think that might help. Renea says, do you think I should do the boot camp while doing Brightline Freedom? Renea, it depends on your bandwidth, sweetheart. So, you know what? Let me just turn on my webcam here. Here we go. Hi, in my office. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Renea, if you're in Brightline Freedom, for those who don't know, Brightline Freedom is usually a course that people take after they take the boot camp. It's a course on doing the inner work. And Renea, if you have bandwidth, like let's say you're retired and you just have a lot of time on your hands and, the Brightline Freedom work is going okay, it's not overwhelming you, then you could do the boot camp as well. If you work full time and you have kids and the Brightline Freedom work is like you're barely keeping up with the homework, then I wouldn't add this to your plate. It's really up to you. It's a bandwidth issue. There's no conflict in terms of the content. They could actually be quite additive and supportive as long as you have the time to do them both. Lori says, thank you so much, Susan. Great stuff. You're welcome, Lori.
Susan?
Yes.
Jen would like to remind you to check the Google Doc.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Google Doc. Is there a Google Doc? I'm just reading right out of the chat thread. Thank you, Chris. Where did I get a link for the Google Doc? In my email? I forgot that sometimes my team, they feed me questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll check with her on Slack.
Yeah, I just checked one email address. I don't see a Google Doc there. Let me check my other email address. Sorry, everybody. Look at me
Yeah.
all renegade, just being right in the.
Jen says it's in email.
Okay. All right. Give me a second. Got it. Okay, this will be more organized. She will keep me organized. Okay.
I see Gigi says she didn't get the exercise bonus. There's a link at the top, and if she clicks on that, she'll get it.
At the link at the top of the chat thread. Yeah, totally. Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris. Keeping me on track as always. Okay. All right. This should do. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Okay. I'm back on track now. Kathleen. I'm getting ready to go through a bone marrow transplant for T-cell leukemia. Will the LBE help me keep my protein levels up so that I don't lose muscle mass during this time? So bright line eating can be modified for, like if you need more protein even. So we make sure that in the bright line eating way, we make sure that you eat protein at each meal. But if it's not, if you run the food plan by your doctor and they say that's not enough protein, you can easily up it. There's no sugar and flour in that. So you should be fine. This would be a good thing to do as you go through bone marrow transplant for T-cell leukemia. I just want to express my sympathy. I can't have empathy because I've never had cancer, but I just want to express my sympathy. My mom's had cancer twice. And I know a little bit about how gruesome and grueling and intense it is to go through that much medical treatment all in a concentrated period of time. So I just want to say I'm with you. And I think that the boot camp would be a wonderful thing to do as you go through that, because you'd get so much support, like so much love and support, and just have people having your back so much. I just want to remind anybody, I don't think I mentioned this, so this isn't a reminder, this is a first time request. Can you please go in and make sure that you've marked your question as a question? You literally need to click on the little chat box that your question is in, and a menu item should come up, and mark it as a question for us. That will help my team to see it as a question. Because some people are just saying, thank you for the webinar, it was great. But we need to know the questions, and when you mark it as a question, it goes to a separate place that my team can see it as such, and then they can feed it to me. Thank you. Fonda says, would you please share how the brain works for people who don't have a thyroid or who have thyroid issues that impact on food, etc., and what to do about it? Thank you so much. Well, Fonda, you're in luck. I have Hashimoto's hypothyroiditis, super bad case of it, have always had it. My mom had it, my grandma had it. And if you don't have a thyroid, then I assume you're taking thyroid hormone supplementation. The good news about that is it's pretty bioidentical. Like the supplementation that you're taking is what the body needs. So at the end of the day, if you have a good doctor who's measuring your levels pretty carefully, there shouldn't be a big difference. I have found that bright line eating works really well for me. There are times when my Hashimoto's makes my system a little bit more sluggish, so that I don't really get to eat as much food as someone else would be able to eat at maintenance at my size. So I'm on a smaller food plan than they would be to maintain. But really, there's no issue. We see people with thyroid issues doing bright line eating super fine and doing really well at it. So Leslie, how much do hormones have to play with losing weight beyond menopause? Well, here's the interesting thing, Leslie. I'm glad you asked this. We have data on, for example, weight loss numbers in the boot camp by the person's age. So, and let's take just women for a second. Let's take women in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, their 80s. Okay? How much weight do they lose in the boot camp on average? Funny enough, the highest numbers that we see are women in their 30s and women in their 50s. But really, there's almost no difference. Like, there isn't a statistical difference between any of those ages. So I told you the average is 17 pounds. Based on decile of age, the lowest is like 15.3 on average, and the highest is like 18.2. But they're not actually different. Like, those aren't. It's like, they're all pretty level. And so what's interesting is that, of course, sort of anecdotally, women experience having a much harder time releasing weight after menopause, like a much harder time. As a matter of fact, word on the street is, I don't know if you've heard this, women can't lose weight past menopause, right? And we have data to show that that's not true in bright line eating. So I recently went over to my friend Jade Tita's house. He has a PhD as well. And he's an expert in the hormonal regulation of fat loss. So I went over to Jade's house, and this was in LA, I don't know, a year ago or something, 6 months ago, a year ago, and I had a tape recorder. And I said, all right, dude, kick down. Like, you got to explain to me. I have these data showing, I know that women have a hard time losing weight after menopause, not in my program. Why? And I said, here's the thing. We have them eliminate sugar and flour entirely, which regulates their insulin levels really quickly. Is that the key here? And he said, oh, Susan, yes, that's what's going on. So he said, basically what's going on is that estrogen is the hormone that starts to drop off after menopause. Okay, so estrogen is a hormone that sort of turbocharges insulin and makes it work better. So if you have a lot of estrogen in your system, like let's say you're a young woman in her 20s or 30s and you have a lot of estrogen, especially right after your period, right before you ovulate, during that period of time, you'll have a lot of strong estrogen. It will protect you against the harmful effects of the sugar and flour you're eating. After menopause, no such benefit. Okay? Now, if you stop eating sugar and flour, it doesn't matter. It levels the playing field. So if you stop eating sugar and flour and you stop taxing your body that way, all of a sudden you turn the body of a 50 or 60 or 70 or 80-year-old woman into the body of a 20 or 30-year-old woman, because you're not creating the stress that the estrogen mitigates against. So anyway, basically, long story short, after menopause, you have to not eat sugar and flour. Otherwise, you're just sunk. You're not going to lose your weight, basically. I mean, that's, exaggerating, but, or like, that's the Cliff Notes version, I would say. Okay. Okay. So if you're having a hard time seeing the free gift link, you might see the offer for the bootcamp instead. You need to minimize that and toggle over to the chat thread. And the pinned thing at the top of the chat thread is what will show you the free gift link. Okay. Marcia says, can we add fruit to dinner as a maintenance option? I'd rather have that than more grain at breakfast. Yeah, totally. So you have a lot of autonomy when you get to maintenance, Marcia, about like what specifically you add. That's fine. You want to add that, that's fine. Yes, I'm in my flannel pajamas. I didn't know that I'd be showing my legs. So anyway, I'm all relaxed here. Another Susan is asking a question. Can you address the confusion I have with listening to the plant-based communities and how freedom is not measuring your food? Do you understand what I mean? Eat all the vegetables and whole foods and you'll lose weight. Yes, Susan, I can totally understand. Yes, I can help clean this up. This is how the susceptibility scale comes into play in terms of really understanding the landscape here, in terms of diet and weight loss and healthy eating. And so in the plant-based communities, now I'm just going to say, okay, I'm just going to be really like frank, okay? I love these people. Like, I know them. Dr. Clapper, okay, so True North Health Center, right? Like, Alan Goldhammer. Alan Goldhammer invited me to come visit the True North Health Center in August of 2014 and gave me a tour of the facility and picked my brain on how to help people stick with a plan, because they bring people into True North, teach them how to eat this plant-based way, help them learn how to fast. People lose all this weight from fasting, because if you don't eat anything for 40 days, of course you lose weight, and then go off on their way, but then they're back to eating their crapola, right? They can't keep people on a system. I can keep people on a system. Longevity is what we do here at Bright Line Eating. They don't know how to do it. Okay, so I'm just saying I love these guys. I love them. John Robbins, Ocean Robbins, two of my best friends in the world. They're all low on the susceptibility scale. Just saying. Joel Furman, low on the susceptibility scale. All of them. Neil Barnard, low on the susceptibility scale. They haven't a clue of what it's like to have a brain that's highly susceptible. They just don't. And one of the things about having a brain that's highly susceptible is our brains do not respond to quantities in the same way. There's this like starting to eat thing, and then some satiety, some like fullness starts to kick in, and then a switch flips halfway during the meal, and we start to get like hungrier. So we just want to eat more. Like they just don't get it. They don't get how we could sit down and eat a container of cashews and a container of raisins while watching TV. Like their brains don't work that way. So, all the foods that are on their plan, the black bean brownies and the oat date bars and they don't get how you start putting dates in something, it's game over for us. They don't get it. They don't get how our brain will game the system and figure out, where to get the hyper palatable food in the whole food plant-based food plan. There are ways. Yeah, butternut squash all day long, baby, right? Walnuts and raisins all day long. So they're speaking from their experience. And it's true for them. When they restrict their eating to these foods, the whole, real, unadulterated foods, their brains always tell them when to stop eating. So they assume it's true for you. They don't understand the susceptibility scale. So for them, they look at the natural world and they say, animals don't weigh their food to maintain a healthy weight. Once you're eating the natural way, you would never have to weigh your food to maintain a healthy weight. And I think, well, nobody's been feeding those deer donuts for 10 years and then seeing what happens to their brains. My guess is that 1/3 of them would never be able to regulate their quantities again if you fed them donuts for 10 years and then let them loose in the world, right? They don't understand how addiction rewires the brain in some percentage of brains. They don't get that, right? They're not neuroscientists who study food addiction. They're MDs. They learn nothing about this stuff in medical school. Nothing. Not 2 seconds of information about the neuroscience of addiction. None. So for them, not weighing food is freeing. For us, it turns out that putting food on a scale is the most freeing thing we ever do. It's amazing. You start putting your food on a scale and you're like, oh my gosh, that voice that tells me to eat more, that whispers, maybe you didn't have enough. Oh, maybe I'll have a couple more. Oops, maybe a couple more. Oh, what am I doing? I'm doing it again. It silences that voice. You eat a big, bountiful meal, you've put it on the scale, and that voice quiets. So the higher you are on the susceptibility scale, the more likely it is that using a digital food scale will produce freedom. The lower you are on the scale, the more likely it will feel like insanity and unnecessary constraint, right? Now, we invite people who are low on the scale to do Bright Line Eating. And if you want to do it and you want to weigh your food, great. If you want to use a 1 plate of food rule, that's fine too. I hope that helps, Susan. I know these communities really well and I love them. I love what they're doing. Michael Greger, love him. Like, thank goodness he's doing what he's doing in the world. I watch nutritionfacts.org. It's where I go for my nutrition information. There's a few other people I love. David Katz is one of them. There's a few people that are doing just such great nutritional work out there. Bless them. All of them are low on the susceptibility scale. They have never for one moment navigated brain that is high. So Susan, if you're high on the susceptibility scale, that's the difference. That's why what they're saying is not jiving with what I'm saying. I agree with what they're saying for people who are low to the mid-range, low, like, 1 to 4 or 5 on the susceptibility scale. Yes, for some people, eating the right food solves the problem. I kind of went on and on about that, but I hope that helps. Okay. Susie says, "Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for everything. I bought your Bright Line Eating book yesterday and I read it all." Wow, that's awesome. "I'm aware of the food principle, but I'd like to know what to do if I want to eat soup. How do I weigh it? First fluid, then veggies, etc. Thank you so much." Yeah, Susie, the weighing of the food is primarily to keep your brain peaceful. So whatever system you devise is fine. Just do it every way the same way after that. So there's lots of ways to do it. You could weigh the veggies separate, weigh the meat separate, then add 8 ounces of broth or whatever is a freebie. That's fine, like a condiment. That's fine. You could say, okay, I'm going to get Amy's organic can of soup and I'm going to weigh out, let's say it's lentil soup and you're counting it as your protein. You get 6 ounces of lentils, but it's soup. It's got some water in it, right? Okay. Let's say you decide I'm going to weigh out 10 ounces of the soup and count it as my protein. That's fine. Just do it that way every time. You get me? Like, decide in advance what makes sense, systematize it, and then just go with it. Because really, your body doesn't care if it's 10 ounces, 11 ounces. Your body, it's for your brain. It's so that your brain is quiet and you can develop automaticity. So as long as you pick one way and do it the same way every time, it's fine. Sue says, "Hi, Susan. I've been doing Bright Line Eating for 10 weeks. I'm down 23 pounds, but I think I'm still fighting leptin resistance. Is it just a matter of time? Any word on average healing time?" Sue, I forgot to ask, is there a test to find out leptin levels? Yeah, you can measure leptin levels, but what you can't measure is leptin resistance, unfortunately. I was a little simplistic in my webinar. It's not just insulin that blocks leptin. It's also high triglycerides. It's also high inflammation. Luckily, the fix is the same because eliminating sugar and flour brings down all those things. The key, though, is that some people's bodies are more damaged than others. Some people's cells are more damaged than others. So, for example, on the same really clean Bright Line Eating diet, some people will experience insulin lowering immediately. Like, I mean, within a couple days, their insulin will just come down and stay down. Their blood sugar will regulate. Other people who have insulin resistance on board, it might take months for that stuff to heal. So there is no like average healing time. It really depends. There's like a broad spectrum there. So it's entirely possible that you still have some leptin resistance on board. I will say also, I don't have any leptin resistance on board anymore, but my quantity regulators have never worked their way out. Like, they've never healed. 15 years. If I don't use my digital food scale, like let's say I'm in a restaurant and I'm just not weighing my food or whatever, I can get back into that place of like, my brain will just tell me to keep eating forever. It's the weirdest thing. So we don't know exactly what that's about. Like, there's big gaps still in the scientific literature on these sort of phenomena. So leptin resistance, in my opinion, is not the only reason that someone would not have the ability to regulate their caloric intake. It's my experience and my belief that sometimes those sensors just get broken. The good news is, when you have a digital food scale and you get used to certain quantities of food, you can just sort of eyeball them if you're out to eat or whatever, and you can get by, But this is why, for some of us, I just don't recommend, this idea of like, well, my body's hungry. I'm like, well, my body never gives me reliable signals. My body wants ice cream, pretty much, so, and a lot of it. So I don't, I personally prefer to get most of my cues externally. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's dinner time, I'm going to eat a big salad because that's what I do at dinner, kind of thing, So, Annette says, "How do you figure out where you are on the scale you spoke about?" That's a great question, Annette. There's lots of ways to find out. Why don't you go to, we have a website that has the quiz, foodfreedomquiz.com. foodfreedomquiz.com. That will give you the quiz. You put in your email address. That should take you right to a video just right now, because we're in the middle of, we're offering this boot camp right now, right? So I have these 3 videos that are out. They're called the Food Freedom videos. We only release them once in a blue moon. When we do, they go viral around the world. Like, they get watched in every country on planet Earth. It's really exciting. And they're out right now. So they're traveling around the world. The energy pulsing of bright line eating around the world is fabulous right now. It's so good. So just because it's right now, taking that quiz and finding out your score will take you to a video that will reiterate some of the information that I shared in this webinar, and also videos 1 and 2 and 3. And it'll also share some additional information that I didn't share in this webinar. So that'll be good. Susanna says, if insulin blocks leptin, how much should we consider the glycemic index of foods? Is it harder on a plant-based diet to curb insatiable hunger? No, a plant-based diet is fine. I'm actually really supportive of plant-based diets. They're not mandatory for doing bright line eating, but I'm supportive of them for lots of reasons. I think it's environmentally a better option. Just morally and ethically, the treatment of animals that get eaten for food these days. I'm not that happy with factory farms and so forth. Should we consider glycemic index? The Bright Line Eating Food Plan for the vast majority of people takes care of that. And it takes care of that by making sure that you eat some protein and some fat at every meal. And that will balance the glycemic load. It's not really the glycemic index of each food individually that matters. It's the glycemic load of the meal. And so, for example, in Bright Line Eating, you never eat fruit without eating other categories of food at the same time. So the glycemic load of the meal is balanced. For most people, you don't have to worry about glycemic index of specific foods. If you have a history of diabetes or pre-diabetes or just really wonky glucose and insulin numbers, like, hypoglycemia, things like that, you might find that you want to avoid the highest glycemic fruits. Like pineapple might not be a good bet for you. Stick with berries and apples. Other than that, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Care says, hi, I have wicked cravings for salty foods. Is salt a refined powder too? Good question. So salt and fat. Okay, I'm about to make up a term. I'm going to call them addictive modifiers. Like they, or amplifiers maybe. They kind of, like, you add salt and fat to foods that have a sugar and flour base. Like for me, my favorite binge foods always have a lot of fat in them. I'm just not that into hard candy on its own. But you add some good fat into a sugar product, and now it's like, that's really triggering for me. Salt is kind of the same way. Like salty broccoli, no one's leaving their house in a snowstorm for some salty broccoli, right? But, salty, chips or something like that. Now, just so you know, the inside of a white potato is molecularly equivalent to white flour. It's basically straight glucose with no mitigating fiber. Popcorn becomes the same thing. So popcorn and potato chips and corn chips, sorry guys, they're out. They're flour. Molecularly speaking, they're equivalent to flour. So salt isn't a refined powder in the sense that you don't have to abstain from it categorically to heal your brain. What you need to do is you need to abstain from all the foods that you would put the salt on that would make it that good. You know what I mean? Like my guess is that if you take all of the corn-based, flour-based, potato-based, refined, deep-fried things out of the mix, and you're just putting salt on broccoli, carrots, I mean, what you got, right? Like you actually need to add some salt to your food to be maximally healthy, believe it or not. So no, salt isn't one of the refined powders that we abstain from. It turns out to not be a problem once you take out all the sugar in the flour, right? Rich says, what about protein, whey powders? Rich, if you're high on the susceptibility scale, I would say no. If you're low or moderate, you might find that they're fine. I would say you don't need them unless you're lifting heavy weights. Jill, no flour at all. Coconut, almond, fava, gluten-free. Correct, Jill, no flour at all. Again, sort of, I covered this in the webinar. It's not actually the plant that it comes from. It's the refining process that's the problem. Um, Barbara says, when you lose a lot of weight, will skin firm up as you lose? It depends, not always. Most people I know who've lost a lot of weight are pretty happy at their goal weight. Not everybody, finds that their skin is firm at the end. No, so loose skin can be an issue. I did a whole vlog on loose skin. If you go to brightlineeating.com, our website, and then you click on blog, there's a search bar right at the top. And if you type in loose skin, you'll see my whole vlog on that. Because there's a lot to it. Yeah, the loose skin topic actually. So the boot camp that I just invited you all to join, at the end of the boot camp is Bright Lifers. That's like a forever program. And we've got like 4,000 Bright Lifers now. We have a special interest group, which is like a separate subgroup of Bright Lifers that are Bright Lifers from bigger numbers. And, to get into that group, you have to have started with more than 100 pounds to lose. And loose skin is the big topic of the day in there right now. Everybody's abuzz with like, how much does it weigh? And how do you figure out your goal weight if you have loose skin? And, surgery, no surgery. And are there strategies for firming it up? Does autophagy do it? Does fascia blasting do it, etc.? Everybody's getting really into the science of that. So I guess I just am saying this because if you decide to join the Bright Line Eating community, like for real, like go through the boot camp and then join Bright Lifers, you will have a big community of people who will be really supportive about the different options and so forth. Yeah. Susan says, oh my gosh, there's so many Susans asking questions. It's just weird. Okay. Susan says, I'm going on a river cruise in France that we booked before I found Bright Line Eating. What happens if I vary from the program, such as have a glass of wine that is only in France? So here's the thing, Susan. You can do that. There's no Bright Line Eating police. I do want to share with you an invitation, just an inquiry, okay? My guess is that your brain is telling you that your trip couldn't possibly be as good as it could be if you didn't do that, right? That there's something about the food and the wine in France that if you didn't partake, you would be missing out on this sun-soaked, perfect French experience. And I just want to invite you to consider whether that's true. I've been doing this now for 15 years. I've traveled literally around the world in that time, everywhere from Australia to France to Israel to, Norway to whatever. And I have both stuck with my bright lines perfectly and deviated from my bright lines on travel trips. And deviating never produces a better experience. The most glorious, heart-bursting travel experiences I've ever had were when I was keeping my bright lines and using all of my energy to pour into the people I was with and the experience I was having and my gratitude for being there. And whenever I deviated from my plan, I suddenly got trapped up in my head about, was that enough? Am I happy? All of a sudden, am I going to have a second glass? I don't drink. I've been sober for 24 years. So for me, that's not the issue, but food, right? So am I going to have another piece? Am I going to do it again the next night? Did I gain weight? Blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, it turns into a nightmare. And I don't have peace until I get back on my plan. So I just want to invite you to consider whether your saboteur, we didn't cover the saboteur in this webinar. I cover it a lot in my book. I cover it a lot in the boot camp. We have a saboteur that whispers to us, that tries to get us to make exceptions. The trouble with making exceptions is that now you train your brain to hound you for exceptions. Exceptions beget more exceptions. Exceptions beget a brain that is not happy, thin, and free. It's trying to see when you're going to loosen up again and give it what it wants, right? An exception here and there is the opposite of being free. You now have a brain that's like, how about now? You gonna deviate now? How about now? Oh, there's something happening tonight. How about tomorrow night? So consider it. I mean, you could do it, and you could, get into your boot camp house and talk it over with people. Get some support around it. Kathy says, do you have to stay off sugar and flour forever? Well, I mean, I just was honest with you. I haven't stayed off sugar and flour forever. I've been doing this for 15 years. My longest stretch of perfect, immaculate, bright lines, like not a single bite off plan, is 8 years. And I've had many times of like 1 or 2 years in a row without a deviation. So Kathy, I just want to invite you to consider that maybe your saboteur is inviting you to ask that question, because it feels impossible to not eat sugar and flour forever. Like, who could possibly do that, right? And what I want to say about that is that there's no such thing as not eating sugar and flour forever. There's just no such thing, because decisions are made in the day. And this is a philosophical discussion now, but I just want to propose that all we have is today. So I don't eat sugar and flour or not eat sugar and flour tomorrow. I eat them or not eat them today. And the first video, I don't know if it's the first video, but it's in the first module, the first week of videos that you get in the boot camp is a video on 1 day at a time. That the first strategy your saboteur will use to try to get you to eat off your plan is, you couldn't possibly do this forever. That's crazy. That's like saboteur 101. It's the first strategy it's going to try. And falling for that is like, that's rookie mistake number 1. The answer is, no, I'm not going to do this forever. We can have that cake tomorrow. We're just not eating it today. So like, it's like the guy in the AA meeting who's been sober for 35 years who says, I'm Jimmy and I'm an alcoholic. And I don't know if I'm going to not drink forever. I might drink tomorrow, but I'm not drinking today. So no, you don't have to stay on this plan forever. You don't have to not eat sugar and flour forever. But I invite you to not eat sugar and flour from the day you start the boot camp till the day you go to bed that night. Take it 1 day at a time. Susan, another Susan, says, when does the boot camp officially start? I missed the date. So registration is open right now. And what happens when you register, Susan, is that you go through the clean start process, which takes a little while. And you then have control over clicking the start button. So your 8 weeks, or it's now 10 weeks because you get that bonus, right, for the 2 extra weeks, starts when you say it starts. So the clean start process is actually before the 10 weeks starts, okay? Alice says, is there an official start of this boot camp, or should I just go ahead and start now? I'm a bright lifer, and this will be my second boot camp. Thanks. So Alice, just like I just said to Susan, you go ahead and register now, and then whenever you get through that clean start process, you can do your day 1 experience, and you can go ahead and get started. Okay, Stephanie says, hi, I used to enjoy exercise a lot in my 20s, i.e. running, swimming. I'm now 46 years old. I've been approximately 75 to 80 pounds overweight for 15 years now. I recently started walking and occasional jogging again in hopes for a 5K run. I feel better getting some physical activity after being mostly sedentary for many years. It makes me feel better mentally and seems to help curb hunger. Is it okay to continue exercising while doing bright line eating? Also, what is your opinion on intermittent fasting? I've done some reading about how it helps lower insulin levels and some benefits with immune function, allowing your body to break free from allowing your body a break from digestion. Fast approximately 12 to 6 hours and basically skipping breakfast and eating during a shorter window during the day. Okay, Stephanie. So what I want to invite you to do is to trust and be patient. Everything you're doing right now is great. The strategies that you're talking about are like helpful. And the boot camp is like lifetime game changer. And I really, 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 really want to invite you to surrender into the process of the boot camp and just trust. And what that means is let that exercise go for now. And it means let the intermittent fasting go for now and just trust. very quickly you will get to add both of those things back in. Now, the intermittent fasting, actually, notice you're talking about a fasting window of 12 to 16 hours. If you ate dinner at 5 and were done at 6, and then you didn't eat breakfast again the next morning until 8 a.m., that would be a 14-hour fasting window, right? You're going to get, that's not intermittent fasting. That's called time-restricted feeding. And there are all those benefits you mentioned go with time-restricted feeding. Intermittent fasting would be more eating within a 6-7 hour window, something like that, and fasting for the rest of the day. Whatever. People debate the terms, but you're going to get time-restricted feeding just from not eating anything after dinner. No snacking, basically. No snacking and no grazing. The 3 meals a day, the bright line of 3 meals a day is going to get you that benefit. I understand that the movement that you're doing right now is wonderful. I think it's more important to put your bunny slippers on and just really rest and focus on this boot camp and trust. Trust, trust, trust. There's no way to adequately language the transformation you're about to experience. And it's going to go so fast, and it's going to be worth it for you to just be all in. So you don't have, I just want to say, you don't have to take my advice on this. You can keep doing what you're doing. I don't recommend it. I recommend that you really surrender and just trust what we've laid out. It really is in your best interest, in my opinion. But you are the author of your own ship, and there are no bright line eating police. So those are my thoughts. Lila says, my husband is an insulin-dependent type 2 diabetic. Does he just have to put up with incredible hunger cravings until his baseline insulin levels lower? Any tips that could help him? So if he wants to do the bright line eating boot camp, he needs to consult with his doctor, because his insulin is going to need to come down probably pretty darn quickly, like within days. Almost all, like the vast majority of insulin-dependent type 2 diabetics see a decrease in their medications during the boot camp. Some of them eliminate their medications entirely. No, I don't think that his hunger levels are going to be even as much as they are now, because proper eating is going to right his ship pretty quickly. Vicky says, is Celtic salt better? I don't know anything about Celtic salt. I eat Himalayan pink salt, and I'm not a salt aficionado. So I do believe that salts that are from more natural places have more minerals and good stuff that you need, but I've just kind of heard that through the grapevine. Eileen says, is Bright Lifers a one-time cost or an annual cost? Bright Lifers is an annual membership. Caitlin says, I can relate to having insatiable hunger. However, I do not consume a lot of flour or sugar products at all. I eat a ton of vegetables and often find myself eating a lot of vegetables after a meal because I feel unsatisfied. What would you recommend? Okay, I'm going to be glib. The Bright Line Eating Boot Camp. Seriously, it's astounding how much the boot camp can like clear up simple things. So, for example, just the eating 3 meals a day with nothing in between can be just a total game changer. I recommend that you do the boot camp, and I do believe it will clear it all up for you. You have a 30-day money back guarantee. If it doesn't, you can have all your money back. April says, hey, Susan, my husband and I are loving our new Bright Line Eating living lifestyle. Thank you. But I'm in the thick of nursing a baby, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on appropriate adjustments for me to keep up my milk supply. Thanks. Yeah, April, that's tricky. So milk supply is so sort of testy, sort of sensitive. So what are my thoughts? You probably want to eat more often. I would suggest 5 or 6 meals a day. You probably want to eat more calories than you're eating. You probably want to up your fat. I would eat more nuts. I would eat more avocado. I would eat more grain. And I would use something like MyFitnessPal combined with some kind of calculator online for, to keep your milk supply up for lactation. Like, how much food should you be eating? It's probably more than you're eating. Carol says, if I'm moderately active already, do I need to not exercise to start bright line eating? Carol, you don't need to. The recommendation, it really has to do around willpower and the science of habit formation. It turns out that there's sort of a tipping point of bandwidth. Like, it takes a lot of bandwidth, more than people realize, to get their food so squared away that real habits and automaticity can form in an entirely new way. And exercise is like just enough extra stuff to do during the day that it sort of shatters the glass. Like, it's just too much. Both in terms of the willpower depletion and in terms of energy stores, because weight loss is exhausting because you're releasing toxins into your system and all this sorts of stuff. So, I don't hold a gun to anyone's head and say you have to not exercise. It's a strong recommendation, though. And we do have good data showing that people who exercise during the boot camp don't lose as much weight and don't keep their lines as bright and like just aren't as successful long term. We do have research on that. So you don't need to not exercise to start the boot camp. There's no requirement of that. Plenty of people do what they want to do and they keep exercising, and on average, they're less successful. So we have data on that. So totally, it's up to you. And I will say, little asterisk, if you have clinical depression or clinical anxiety and you exercise to help you with that, then it might be worth it. You know what I mean? Like, there's trade-offs. Life is trade-offs, right? So that might be a reason to keep exercising. Vicky says, what sweeteners can we use? None. Like, all of them. Stevia, all of them. There are connections from the tongue straight to the addictive centers of the brain. And anything added to your food to make it sweeter will trigger them. Deb says, is it possible to start the program other than Friday when it opens? I will be disconnected from available internet until the following Monday. Also, I'm healing from breast cancer. Do you see any concerns I should have? So, Deb, yes, you can register now and then get through as much of the beginning process as you can, and then not start until you want to start. If you want to wait until later, you have control once you start over when you do your day one. I don't see any concerns in terms of healing from breast cancer. I think that there shouldn't be any conflicts there. Definitely talk with your doctor, but on my end, I don't see any concerns. Felipe says, hi, thank you very much. It was a great webinar. Can you give us any tips to reduce our insulin baselines? Yeah, don't eat any sugar or flour. Sarah says, I'm only a few pounds over my ideal weight. Some would say I am the right weight, but I have some wobble, I think. Is the boot camp right for me? Thank you for this fabulous event. Thanks, SMJ. We get lots of people signing up for the boot camp who don't have much weight to lose. We have some people who even need to gain weight, which makes it really interesting, actually, that we have those average 17 pounds lost numbers, because a lot of people are joining the boot camp without even that much weight to lose. Those numbers are average. We have a lot of people losing a lot more weight than that. So Sarah, yes, if you want freedom from food obsession, if you want your eating to get really clear and clean, and if you want to take off those few pounds that are creating that wobble, then yeah, the boot camp can totally be for you, for sure. Chipper says, what about research that shows that tryptophan, the building block of serotonin, could get into the brain only after sweet or starchy carbohydrates were eaten, and that eating them with protein inhibits the process? I want to Google. Okay. My understanding of tryptophan is not that. Okay, hold on. Yeah, okay. So tryptophan is an amino acid group. So the body can't synthesize it. It needs to be obtained from the diet, and it's in all kinds of foods. So I disagree with the research the way you presented it. I was just Googling just to make sure before I counteracted what you said. But so not only is it a precursor to serotonin, it's also a precursor to melatonin. And it's in lots of different foods. So yeah. Okay, Lisa, thank you so much for this wonderful seminar. You're one of the few that's explained the role of leptin. Can you direct me toward information on low leptin levels? I only found info on leptin resistance. My levels are almost non-existent, which shouldn't be for someone with a BMI of 25. Tested after a 15-pound weight gain over the year and 2 hours after a generous lunch. So they shouldn't have been low. Mine were 2.3, normal should be 23.7. I have to obsess an 8 on the susceptibility scale to keep close to a normal weight. Definitely not living happy, thin, and free. I think the boot camp would be helpful, but I wonder if I need some medical intervention. My endocrinologist is at a loss. Sorry for the long question. Okay, so here's the thing about leptin levels. They vary a whole lot. I mean, I think you're smart. You've obviously researched this a lot. You're smart to present like that, 2 hours after a generous lunch, because leptin levels actually fluctuate quite a bit based on what we've eaten and not eaten, and they vary hugely. Which means that measuring them can be kind of a fool's errand, right? Because it's like, well, if it were a different, it's sort of like cortisol levels. Cortisol levels are similar in this way. Like, it's really hard to just measure them and get anything helpful. That said, I believe you that your leptin levels are low. I don't know. I don't know if there's any way these days to supplement that. I don't think so. You're already working with an endocrinologist. I don't know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Leptin resistance is kind of more my wheelhouse. I don't know anything about, congenitally low leptin levels. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, honey. Good luck, doctor. I don't know. I'm sorry. Suzanne says, hi, Susan. You speak about powder mechanism. So cheese has the casomorphins, which are also addictive. They bind with the opioid receptors. Cheese is not universally a problem for everybody, so it's allowed in bright line eating, but I recommend, so in bright line eating, and we talk about this in the boot camp, I really empower each person to sort of know their own system and what triggers them particularly. Like someone was saying salt earlier, right? So if cheese is an issue, I invite you to abstain from it. It's a related mechanism, similar but not exactly the same. Diane says, thanks, Susan. I've had weight loss surgery, the gastric sleeve. Not sure I can eat the volume of food. Are there strategies for this scenario? Yes, Diane. As a matter of fact, we have a whole support group for people who've had gastric bypass. Many of them have had the sleeve, and we have alternate food plans and approaches for you for sure. So we are super skilled at helping people who've had weight loss surgery. Super common. Very few people who've had weight loss surgery get into a right-sized body. A lot of them start gaining back their weight and they come to bright line eating. So you're not alone. So yes, we can definitely help you. Jen says, my body's calorie needs seem to fluctuate more than the average person. Some days I'm really hungry and some days I'm not. It isn't emotional. Sometimes I really do actually physically need more food than others. And if I don't eat more than my measured amount, then I will feel weak and famished later. How do I manage this and still have bright lines? So there are ways within the Bright Line Eating food plan, Jen, to vary the amount of food that you get, even with the same food plan day after day. So the way you do this is by varying the food specifically that you eat for a certain category. So for example, protein, right? You can eat protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, that could be like 4 ounces of non-fat cottage cheese at 80 calories, or 2 ounces of cashews at almost 400 calories, right? So that's like I can't do math on the fold, several fold increase, right, in the amount of food energy that you're getting. Similarly, corn for your vegetable or butternut squash for your vegetable versus, sauteed green beans or steamed green beans or spinach or something, right? So you can get a lot more energy by picking what we call heavier choices. So the days that you need more energy, I would do that basically. TLN says, can you eat steel cut oats? Yes, totally. Vicky says, question, is all fruit okay? Yes. Carolyn, can you split the 2 fats per day over the 3 meals? If you want to, Carolyn, you could do that. Yep. Okay. So I'm a bright lifer. What additional info will I get if I sign up for this bootcamp versus listening again to my original bootcamp modules? So Louise, basically we have these 3 exclusive bonuses that are only for this bootcamp. So as a bright lifer, you would get access to those 3 exclusive bonuses. And let's see here. Susie says, please, how do I weigh veggie soup or lentil soup? Thank you. So I mentioned about weighing soup before, but basically to weigh your soup, just figure out how you're going to weigh it. There's many different strategies you could use, and then just do it the same way every time. So if you're going to make your soup from home, you could be careful about the ingredients that you put into the soup, the right amount. So like if it's chicken soup or whatever, 6 ounces of vegetables, 4 ounces of chicken, and 8 ounces of broth, right? Or if it's a lentil soup, let's imagine that you're guessing that there would be 6 ounces of lentils in 10 ounces of soup if you include the water and everything and account for that. And you just decide that forever and ever, when you're going to have lentil soup, you're going to weigh out 10 ounces of it, right? So pick a strategy and then just stick with it. Let's see here. Reiki says, how long does it take for the brain to heal? It really depends. Hold on real quick. Sorry, I just got my little sheet here is up. It really depends how long it takes the brain to heal. So we don't have firm data on the dopamine downregulation healing process. I want to do an fMRI study on that. It's a gradual process, so the regeneration happens over time. So it's a little bit foolhardy to say, when is it healed? Because, well, it's healing. It's better tomorrow than it was today, and on and on. But we see significant improvement over the course of the boot camp just by surveys asking people about their cravings, right? So 80% of people at the end of the boot camp are reporting little to no cravings anymore ever. However, we know that some brains are more resistant to the healing. About 3 to 5% of boot campers report no reduction in their cravings over the course of the boot camp. So it takes for them a lot longer. My brain was like that. I still had wicked cravings for the first 6 or 8 months. I didn't have full freedom for a year or two. Like, it just took longer. I had my brain was blown out from crystal meth and crack cocaine before that. So, it depends on how damaged the brain and the body have been. But healing happens. And for some people it's quick, and for some people it's slower. Heidi says, how do you do a program like this with a large family of 9 that includes teens who are not on board with healthy eating, even though they need to lose weight as well? Okay, so a couple strategies. First of all, keep your eyes on your own plate. What you eat is your business. What they eat is their business. Second of all, in terms of cooking strategies, the core of the meal is going to be what you eat: protein, vegetable, salad, let's say at dinner, for example. But then add a big pot of starch, and that could be anything. It doesn't have to be food that you eat. So that could be mac and cheese or pasta or potatoes or rice or whatever. Put some bread and butter on the table and maybe some cut up fruit, and boom, you've got a meal. So that's kind of how you do it. Stephanie says, I'm wondering, how does the family adjust to this and still be able to eat together? I have one son who is 7 years old. Do your kids and husband eat differently than you do? My husband could lose a little weight, maybe 15 pounds at most. My son is at a healthy weight and needs to eat to maintain that. Of course, he loves carbs, pancakes, PB&Js, etc. Thank you for your time in doing this webinar. Stephanie, it's just what I just said to Heidi. So no, my husband and kids don't eat exactly the way I do, but they do eat healthier because I eat the way that I do, because there's always vegetables on the table. There's always sort of a balanced meal. Again, the core of what I serve is what I'm eating myself. So it's lunchtime. If I'm cutting up an apple for myself, I cut up an extra one for my kids. If I'm going to have, my kids like tofu and tempeh now because I eat those things a lot. I cook what I'm going to, I serve what I'm going to cook for myself. I serve that to my whole family. And then I add, like you said, the carbs, the big pot of starch, the pancakes, the PB&Js. I still make those for my family. And they eat all kinds of stuff that I don't eat. But they don't ever pin me down and force it down my throat. So we're good. Sarah, is porridge okay to eat on Bright Lines? I read that it's a really good food and it's not a flour. What do you think? I don't know what the ingredients list of porridge is. Is that oats? Is that cream of wheat? It's in America, it's not a specific term. Like it's not porridge is not really, I don't know what it is exactly. So I think it's okay. It's as long as there's no flour in the ingredient or sugar or sweetener, it's okay. Rebecca, I joined your September 2016 boot camp and I've lost over 50% of my weight. Have you heard of anyone experiencing vertigo because of such a dramatic body change? Since my vertigo, I've experienced great difficulties with my Bright Lines. No sugar or flour, no problem. I'm wondering if what's going on with my vertigo could be weight loss related. Not vertigo per se, but if it's dizziness, you might need more salt in your diet. Other than that, I'd check with your doctor about an inner ear issue. I'm sure you've gone to see your doctor, check, get a neurological run up and so forth. No, I haven't heard vertigo per se being weight loss related. Meb says, if you don't have food cravings and you're already on a daily schedule, what will your program offer? Weight loss and clarity and simplicity about what to eat when. Vicky says, what meat is allowed? Any meat that doesn't have sugar or flour in it. So as long as it's not cured ham with sugar or processed meats with sugar or whatever, any meat is fine. Karen says, I had trouble with the susceptibility quiz. I know we're supposed to consider a 3-month period of time, but I only have random problem days, one at a time. At worst, I've had 3 separate bad days in a 3-month period. Do I answer based on the severity of those days or how difficult it was to resume normal eating? Right. Yeah, Karen, this is difficult. So, I'm guessing that you're a binger and that when you say you had a hard day, you mean a binge. I'm not sure. So these questions are asking on a scale from 1 to 5, right? With 1 being like no issue and 5 being like, oh yeah, big issue. And I get what you're saying. Like in terms of losing control of food, for example, you might lose control that one day, but then never, on the other days. So I want you to just feel into, what does that mean for you? Is it like, well, that's often enough, so that's a 5? Or is it like, well, that doesn't always happen, so a 3 or a 4? It's really your call. And at the end of the day, the susceptibility score is a tool for you to get a sense of how vigilant you need to be with your food, right? So it's your call, sweetheart. Richard says porridge is whole rolled oats. Is that permissible? Yes. Linda says, what about miso? Miso is a protein. That's fine. Yep. And when you get into the boot camp, we have an FAQs with hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of specific food questions like this. Like, what about jackfruit? What about, chestnuts? What about, which aren't really nuts, etc. Right? So the FAQs have got your back. Can I have cream cheese? On and on and on. So there's tons and tons and tons of answers in the FAQs. But I think we've got everyone covered now. All right, my dears. Let's see here. Kathy has a question. We're winding down here. Will this work if I cannot cook? It can. You can cook minimally. I don't know what you mean by I cannot cook. Do you mean like mobility-wise, I can't make it into the kitchen? Do you mean I just never learned how to cook, in which case you could get some tips from people? Do you mean I tend not to have time to cook, so I need a lifestyle where I'm not expected to be in the kitchen? So I don't know, Kathy, exactly what you mean by I cannot cook. But there's nothing in Brightline Eating that requires any of your food to be warm or heated, and you can get everything you need to have a Brightline meal out of a grocery store, right? So there is no need that you cook anything. You can open a can of beans. You can use hummus. You can use nuts. You can buy a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. Like you don't personally have to cook a single thing. You will have to assemble your own food with a digital food scale. If you can't do that, then this probably won't work unless you have someone helping you and working for you or something, or assisting you, who's willing to do that, to assemble your meal and put the right amount of food on a plate using a digital food scale. Then that will work for you. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So sweet. I'm doing this again tomorrow and then the next day, all live with Q&A again. If you enjoyed it, feel free to spread the registration link, email it to friends that you think might enjoy it, share it on Facebook, whatever. I enjoyed spending this time with you. Thank you, everybody. I think I'm going to get a few minutes off here and then go be live on Facebook. Lots of time today on camera, helping people learn how to get happy, thin, and free. I love it. So I am grateful for you. I see that a lot of people here, 564 people, stayed till the very end, 2 hours and 46 minutes. I'm going to sign off. Everyone have a wonderful day. Lots of love. Okay, bye.